Part 81. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 831. The Yuxing Gang's sudden change overnight has aroused heated discussion among many people. In the tea house, some people were whispering among themselves about the rumors they had heard. However, the rumors are very strange. A Ben, who was supposed to be the protagonist, became a supporting role instead. What people talk about more is a dragon crossing the river. It is said that this man was very good at kung fu. He killed Qinjian boxing champion Jiao Jingshen with 3 punches and 2 kicks. He broke into the Yuxing gang alone and so on. Some people went even more exaggerated, saying that Jiao Jingshen rushed forward and was kicked to death by the opponent before he could even throw a punch. Of course, no one believed this statement and thought it was too exaggerated. If he really had such a method, he would have become famous in the world long ago. That's not the most evil thing. The most evil thing is that Mr. Tiger is on the list. Isn't that right? He has the best relationship with brother number 1. Why did brother number 1 suddenly turn his back and arrest him? Do you think it's evil or not? If you are registered, you will either die in prison or spend half your life in prison. Unless someone has extraordinary skills, there will be no way to survive. Several people were drinking tea when their expressions suddenly changed and they quickly lowered their heads and did not dare to speak anymore. I saw a group of people walking through the street. These people were shirtless, with a long roll of cloth hanging around their waists, and each of them had a stick in their hand. It looked like they were members of Pao Ji's gang. This group of people left in a hurry, and before a few tea drinkers could raise their heads, another group of people walked past. Their clothes were different from those of Brother Pao just now. Each of these people had a scimitar on their waist. When I walked over from a distance, there was a strong fishy smell on my body. Anyone familiar with it knew that it belonged to the Yu gang. Ouch, what's going on? This is it. Seeing the two groups of people coming and going in a hurry, the tea patrons took a cautious look and suddenly felt that something was going to happen. Looking at their direction, they seemed to be going to Hungta Tower. Some people looked in the direction where these people were going, and they probably knew what was going on. They quickly packed up their things and threw away the tea money. Quickly leave, the film is about to start tonight. After hearing this, everyone immediately paid their bills and went home. The shop owners on the street started asking their clerks to close their doors early. Today, even the fishball stalls that were open all night also closed their doors and windows early. As soon as it gets to the afternoon, there will be no one on this street. No, it should be said that there are people, and there are a lot of people, but they are all gathered under Hungta downstairs. The crowds of people, with all kinds of prefixes, and those who are slightly worse off, do not dare to get together here. Time passed by, and the group of people waited until the sun set before finally seeing a group of people walking on the street. In addition to the newly promoted Abin, there was one other person walking in front. This man had a ferocious appearance, with a pair of triangular eyes, which looked like a vicious wolf. When he walked over, he glanced at him, and no one around him dared to look directly at him. That's it? Su Tong raised his head and saw that this building was not paying attention at all to the crowd of people around it. That's it, you two, please come in. The person who spoke was a middle-aged fat man, fair, with a middle-parted hair without braids. He had pink hair and a pink face. He looked more like a teacher than a professional. This man's name is Feng Wenzheng, everyone calls him Leather Bag. He carries a leather bag in his hand and never leaves his body. He is the accountant of Hung Tai House, but he is also a well-known white paper fan in the New Territories. It turns out that this morning, the old man came to the door and invited Su Tong and Abin to drink tea at Hungta building. Abin was afraid that Su Tong didn't understand what it meant, so he explained to Su Tong that Hong Talu was in the business of marrying mothers, which was the so-called middleman. The so-called tea drinking is just a few words where the bosses set up a tea ceremony and tell the rules. And the reason why we are in Hongtailu is precisely because all the prefixes in this new territories, no matter what gang or sect they belong to, all tacitly agree on one thing, that is, they are from Hungmen. Although they actually have nothing to do with the Hungmen who fought against the Qing dynasty and restored the Ming dynasty. Master Du, this is to show off to us, you don't have to go. After Abin finished speaking, he turned around and cursed, Princess, have you made a mistake? What does our Yuxing gang's affairs have to do with you? Setting up a tea array is amazing, but Qin's tea house will be burned down tomorrow. Mr. Skin looks gentle and gentle, maybe he is not timid after sitting on the white paper fan. Patting the leather bag in his hand, Abin, as the rule above says, isn't it unreasonable for your newly appointed boss to offer a cup of tea to the grandpas in each hall? As for burning down my tea house, I'm afraid you don't have the guts. What did you do to me? You think I, Abin, are so scared? Abin looked very scary with his cross brows and fierce glare, but Mr. Pai Bao didn't take it seriously and kept looking at Su Tong. It just happened that Su Tong raised his head at this moment, and his eyes met with the old man. In an instant, the old man's chest felt suffocated, and his heartbeat seemed to have suddenly stopped. He quickly avoided Su Tong's gaze, held one hand on the table, took a deep breath, and felt a great fear in his heart. He had seen many red sticks with double flowers at the entrances of various lobbies, but no one could make him feel such fear. That glance was like a shining knife piercing into his heart. Immediately, Mr. Skinny had the idea of retreating. No one is timid who can make a white paper fan, and timid words will never work. But today I was frightened out of my wits, and it would be useless to say any more, okay, forget it if you don't go. Anyway, I brought my words. The leather bagong was about to leave after finishing speaking. Slow. But a deep roar came from behind, making the leather baggage dare not even move his toes. I saw Su Tong stretched and stood up, who said I won't go. Go. It's just too hot. I'll take a nap first and go when I wake up. Just wait here. After saying that, Su Tong ignored Li Baogong, turned around and went to the room to take a nap. After a while, he could really hear the deafening snoring. For a moment, the leather bag man stood there, not daring to leave, so he could only wait obediently. The result of this wait would wait until the afternoon. In fact, Su Tong is quite interested in this tea array. He has no other ideas. He simply wants to see what this so-called tea array looks like. Of course, he also wants to see if he can elicit a few people this time. When two players come out, it only matters if they are from the same camp. If they are not from the same camp, just kill Jiqi. At this moment, Su Tong came to the gate of Hungta building. When he looked back, he saw that Abin and others were blocked outside. He grinned and pushed the door open. Huh, finally here. As soon as they entered the door, they heard a cold scolding, and the old man who spoke stared angrily. Even Mr. Who didn't dare to let them do this for so many years, but when the old man glared at Su Tong, he didn't know what he saw. In the past, his momentum instantly softened. Without him, Su Tong's face looked really fierce. Leopard eyes with erect eyebrows, wide forehead and horizontal face, coupled with Su Tong's aura of calm and self-respecting land immortal, how could they be compared with the so-called gangsters at the dock, especially when Su Tong raised his head and grinned at him. Hey, there weren't many people present who didn't feel embarrassed. Looking left and right, I saw all the bosses in the large and small halls around the tea house were sitting down. In front of them was a statue of a god. It was not popular at this time to pay homage to Master Guan. This statue was Zheng Chenggong. There are several tables above the tea house where the grandpas from the hall are seated. The three old men from the east, west, and south are the grandfathers of Angshen-gui, Hesheng and Qinggang. There is a small square table alone in the middle, with a cup of tea and a pair of chopsticks on it. Interesting. Seeing this, Su Tong sat down carelessly and looked around. Tell me, what are you asking me to do today? His voice was like bells and thunder, making everyone's eardrums hurt. The Tang Cow boss, who had been so aggressive just now, suddenly became silent. Fortunately, at this time, a woman's voice came out from the back hall. It's hard for a dragon to defeat a local snake. Sir, you have extraordinary abilities. Why bother to fight for food with us hard-working people? I just ask you to explain it to me from now on. Everyone will have their own way, and they won't break the rules. As he spoke, a woman walked out of the back hall. She was wearing a dark green cheongsam and holding a white jade fan in her hand. Her hot figure was eye-catching. Her eyebrows suddenly raised, and her eyes revealed the charm of a Jiangnan water town. After Su Tong looked the woman up and down, he grinned and said, "Hey, you girl is so cute and ugly." Hearing Su Tong's words, the smile on the woman's face froze, and immediately everyone around her stood up. The Yan family wants to kill you. Behind the woman, a dark-faced man rushed out and rushed towards Su Tong. This dark-faced man's hands were like hammers, and when he punched out, everyone could hear a burst of wind. Yuan Ho, people on the street call him the Iron Fist King. He can kill even a cow with his fists. As a result, Su Tong didn't even look at it. He raised his hand and raised the teacup, moved it forward, and let the punch hit his chest. As a result, his body shook slightly, and with a soft force, he just knocked this black-faced man away. Ah! Yuan Ho flew away and fell heavily to the ground, then screamed. The hand that had just punched was actually twisted into a twist at this moment. "No tea, please have another cup." When the woman came back to her senses, she saw that Su Tong had handed the teacup in front of him. Now the woman was a little panicked. After taking a look at the black-faced man, he found that Hong Talu's double flower red stick was lying on the ground. The punch he just hit Su Tong actually broke one of his arms. The woman looked at Su Tong's face getting closer and closer, and her face suddenly lost the calmness it had just now. However, Su Tong's actions were more than just that. His big hands were directly around the woman's waist, and he held her in his arms while looking askance at the grandfathers and elders. "I don't understand your rules. From today on, I am the rule. Those who follow me will prosper and those who go against me will perish. Why do you do that?" He Sheng's boss stood up, raised the cup in his hand and threw it to the ground. Other hall bosses began to follow suit. Crack. For a while, the sound of cups being thrown was heard endlessly, which meant that the conversation had broken down, and both parties could take action as much as they wanted. "You can fight, but there are so many of us, and the worst is possible." "That's right, the fish is dead and the net is broken." Seeing the angry expressions of these bosses, Su Tong patted the woman in his arms on the buttocks and said, "Go get some more tea." The woman stiffened and walked aside silently holding the teacup. Su Tong immediately looked at the so-called bosses in front of him, and a ferocious smile appeared on his rough face. "The fish is dead and the net is broken? You are worthy of it?" As soon as Su Tong Xiao's voice fell, he heard a burst of gunshots outside the building. When everyone heard the gunshots, they immediately went to the window to take a look outside. They saw soldiers in neat uniforms already forming a formation outside the building. It turns out that the reason why Su Tong delayed the time until the afternoon was to give Simon enough time to mobilize his troops. At this moment, a dazzling flame suddenly burst out from the black hole of the gun. Bang bang bang. In an instant, a massacre began. The gang members who originally surrounded Hungta Tower had no place to hide. They were shot through by bullets in an instant, and blood splashed on the ground. They screamed and roared for a while. Under the cover of gunfire, people died one after another, falling down one by one. Seeing this scene, everyone in Hungta Tower was instantly stunned. They may never have imagined that a foreigner who usually does not offend others would raise a butcher's knife against them. But in this scene, Su Tong couldn't even see any compassion in his eyes. In his opinion, the so-called Tang Kao gang members are originally a group of jackals who eat people without spitting out their bones. They extort money, kidnap and sell women, force girls into prostitution, sell longevity drugs, run gambling houses, and open fish shops. The bad things you can think of are just daily life for people. For these wolves, tigers, and leopards who are even willing to deal cruel blows to their own people, what else is there to sympathize with? After 3 rounds of gunfire, the foreigners immediately stopped shooting. The gang members on the ground ran away, pretended to be dead, or covered their wounds and fell to the ground wailing in pain. In fact, not many people were actually shot to death. But Simon had no intention of finishing the attack on these people. Instead, he rushed into the door with his men, walked quickly to Su Tong with a stern face, and stood directly behind Su Tong in the surprised eyes of everyone. With an attitude of taking Su Tong's lead, made everyone finally realize what Han Jianglong is. "Is my tea ready?" Su Tong turned his head and looked at the woman hiding in the corner, frowning impatiently. Scare. Only then did the woman wake up from a dream, and her slender little hands, which looked like green onions and jade bamboo shoots, walked up to Su Tong holding the teacup. Su Tong took the teacup, looked at the 3 old men above his head, and raised the tea in his hand. The 3 old men were frightened when they saw this. They quickly raised the teacup on the table and drank it all. What is interesting is that the old grandpa on the left end had dropped the teacup just now, and now he was hugging her in a hurry. Holding a pile of broken teacups, he reluctantly put them together to toast Su Tong. Seeing this, Su Tong didn't care. He drank up the tea in his hand, turned around, picked up the pair of chopsticks on the table, walked to the incense burner behind him, and inserted the chopsticks into the incense burner, which represented that this rule was settled by him. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 832. Kakik. Early the next morning, before dawn, people were already taking to the streets one after another. Some shops started fetching water early to wash away the mud and dust in front of their houses. "Shopkeeper, there was so much noise last night, but it seems so quiet this morning." The clerk from Xixingtang opened the door and looked around the street. When he saw that there was no movement, he turned around and walked to the counter and whispered to the shopkeeper. Go, you don't think it's a big deal? Can you watch it if we make some trouble together?" The shopkeeper glared at the clerk angrily. The waiter scratched his head and said with a smile, "The harder they beat us, the better our business will be." When the shopkeeper heard this, he raised his hand and gave the clerk a slap on the head, and cursed, "Hey, you bastard, ours is a pharmacy, not a coffin shop. We make money with conscience, not get rich from dead people." Yes. The waiter was so scolded by the shopkeeper that he couldn't hold his head up, so he quickly nodded and admitted his mistake. The shopkeeper finished scolding the boy, and after adjusting the abacus a few times, he frowned for a moment. The deficit last month has not been made up, and the deficit this month will probably be even greater. The key is that the camel land every month is too expensive. Thinking of this, the shopkeeper could only call the waiter, "Didn't I say yesterday that I wanted to purchase a rhinoceros horn? Go and return the order and replace it with an ox horn." When the guy heard this, he didn't ask any more questions. Obviously, this kind of thing didn't happen once or twice. Then the shopkeeper fiddled with the abacus a few more times, and began to make calculations in his mind with a grimace. Last time, the big boss sent a telegram saying that he would send someone with good skills to come and see the show, but it has been 2 days and no one has been seen. I am afraid that there may be some accident due to the high mountains and rivers along the way. Thinking that the shopkeeper fiddled with the beads on the abacus twice and took out 10 silver coins, He thought that it was good and saved a lot of expenses. Just as he was thinking about it, someone suddenly broke in from outside the door. When the shopkeeper saw it, his heart skipped a beat and he hurried to greet him. "Brother Shapey, why are you here in person? If you need anything, just let the brothers below know." The person entering the door is called Shapey, the straw sandals of Chingang. He was responsible for collecting the rent in this area, so when the shopkeeper saw this owner, he started to tremble in his heart. "Stop being so verbose, here's some trauma medicine. Didn't you know there was such a big movement last night, crazy thread?" After Sezapi cursed, he casually sat down on the stool and crossed his legs casually. The shopkeeper hurriedly took out a pack of cigarettes and handed them over. Se Shapey took it and lit one, and then continued, "Boss, your rent is almost up this month. Please order it as soon as possible and pay it together." "Well, it's not like there's still half a month left." The shopkeeper looked embarrassed. It had only been half a month since he last paid. If he handed over the money, there was no guarantee that he would collect the money again half a month later. Lai Shapey glared, tilted his head and looked at the shopkeeper. "I'm going to knock your lungs out. I told you to pay now. You are deaf. If you don't believe me, I will kill you." "No, no, no, I'm going right now, I'm going right now." The shopkeeper was yelled at by Lai Shapey and immediately did not dare to say any more. For fear of irritating the gentleman, he walked to the counter and took out a stack of silver coins and gave them to Lai Shapey along with the gold sore medicine sent by the waiter. Lai Shapey collected the money and put the medicine on his hands. Then he stood up with satisfaction and pointed at the shopkeeper. "You know what's going on. Don't be so pushy in the future, you idiot." The shopkeeper paid the money and delivered the medicine, but instead of receiving any benefit, he was scolded, but at this moment he could only nod and smile. If this were in Shanghai, who would dare to be so presumptuous? But here is the new territories, and Zhixingtang's golden signboard. Not only does no one buy his face, but in the eyes of these local snakes, he is just a big fat sheep. Not only does the monthly rent cost more than others, but the place is also used as a free clinic. The shopkeeper sent the person away with a smile, then walked up to the counter with a dark face, fiddled with the abacus a few times, and slammed the table. "That loser named An, there is no trace now, his grandma's. Isn't this a delay? The boss still expects him to escort the next batch. I think it's all in vain. I'll beat up every one of these people I see." The waiter was sweeping the floor with his head down. When he heard the shopkeeper's curse, he pretended not to hear it, knowing that the shopkeeper was angry and had no choice but to let it go. The shopkeeper just cursed a few times when he suddenly heard a shout from outside the door, "Get in." "Oh! I saw a person rolling in and crawling on the ground." The shopkeeper took a closer look and saw that it was Lai Shapey who had just left. Before the shopkeeper could understand what was going on, a group of people walked in from outside the door. These people were neatly dressed in black clothes and had axes on their waists. At first glance, they were members of the Yuxing gang. The shopkeeper, "Come out." Hearing the roar from the leader, the shopkeeper was so frightened that he hurriedly walked out from behind the counter. "Take it, from now on you know your business in Xintang, and our Yuxing gang will protect it. If anyone dares to come to collect rent, break his legs." The visitor took out the money that Lai Shapey had just grabbed and put it on the table. He patted the bewildered shopkeeper on the shoulder and said, "You are lucky. My grandpa values you very much." The shopkeeper looked at the money in his hand and felt flattered, but the visitor took Lai Shapey and left without waiting for him to ask. Now the shopkeeper started to feel a little unpredictable. It was not until noon that the shopkeeper came, which was even more confusing. Someone from the Qing gang came again, but they were not looking for trouble, but to refund the money and all the rent they had charged him before, and said that they had not known about their relationship with Mr. Du before. "If there is a relationship, I promise not to harass you again in the future." Master Du, who is Master Du? The shopkeeper became even more confused when he heard this and hurriedly asked. As a result of asking, I found out that Mr. Du is the new grandpa of the Yuxing gang, and Mr. Du has the final say in the rules of the new territory from now on. These words shocked the shopkeeper. After they left, he quickly asked the waiter to go out and inquire. When I inquired, I found out that just last night, the whole new territories changed. The reputation of Tuya of the Yuxing gang has spread throughout the new territories. He entered the T formation alone and forced the Hongshenggui, Hesheng, and Qing gang families to bow their heads in Hongtailu. From then on, Master Du's rules were the rules in the new territories. When the guy heard this, he just wondered if he had heard it wrong. Although the Yuxing gang was strong, it was not that strong. The waiters in the tea house were well informed. Seeing that he didn't believe it, they couldn't help but look at him with contempt. He has great eyes and hands. Those high-ranking foreigners all want to look at Mr. Du's face. Yesterday, the foreign rifle team moved. They fired with bang bang, but no one was there dare to dissent. Hearing what the waiter at the tea house said, everyone also thought of the gunfire they heard yesterday. When the pharmacy clerk came back and told the shopkeeper was in a state of panic. He didn't expect such a person to exist in the new territories. Hey, do you know the origin of this Mr. Du? The waiter nodded. I asked and heard that this Mr. Du just came to the new territories 2 days ago. His name seems to be, Du. Du Nanan. Du Nanan. The shopkeeper muttered that this person's name sounded familiar to him, but for a while he couldn't remember when he had seen such a person. After thinking carefully for a long time, he lowered his head and walked to the cabinet and glanced at the abacus. Pa, the shopkeeper suddenly slapped his head. Oh, it turns out it's him. The shopkeeper finally remembered this person who was supposed to come to Zhixingtang to calm things down, but he didn't expect that his arrival would turn the entire new territory upside down. Thinking of this, the shopkeeper quickly put down the money in his hand and called to the waiter, "Stop packing, quickly prepare a big gift and come with me." "Hey, shopkeeper, where are we going?" "Go and meet Mr. Du, I just told you. How can the person invited by the boss be an ordinary person?" The shopkeeper is very excited and knows that whether his family can gain a foothold in the new territories in the future depends entirely on Master Du's mood. "Grandpa, drink tea." Abin brought the teacup to Su Tong. Although he was a member of the Yuxing gang, Abin knew that all this was given by Mr. Du in front of him. If Mr. Du can give it, he can also take it back. So in front of Master Du, Abin always had to remind himself not to forget Master Hu's fate. "In the past, you were free to do whatever you wanted, and I didn't care. But recently, you have left me some news about the new territories, especially the Japanese people, so I can find some tricks to keep an eye on them." "Japanese people?" Abin nodded. "There are also many Japanese people in the new territories, but they are all concentrated in Tsim Sha Sui, so this matter is easy to handle. Tsim Sha Sui is home to most Japanese chambers of commerce. These chambers of commerce are very honest and generous in renting anything. So it's not difficult at all to keep an eye on them." After Su Tong gave his instructions, he was about to say something when someone walked in and said, "Grandpa, Cai Fu, the shopkeeper of Zhixingtang, is here." "Oh, it came so soon." Su Tong nodded and signaled Abin to bring them in. "Oh, Mr. Du, you can make it easy for me to find you. I didn't see you at the dock last time. I haven't been able to eat for the past 2 days." As soon as Cai Fu walked in and saw Su Tong sitting on the sofa, he immediately walked forward with his hands crossed and an excited expression. "Oh, I went the wrong way and got off the boat early." Su Tong stood up and nodded. Although what he said was true, the smile on his face full of sinisterness also looked particularly fierce. For a moment, even though Cai Fu was mentally prepared, he felt a little guilty. As soon as the two of them were seated, Su Tong said straightforwardly, I have been taken care of by the boss of yours Hixingtang. I will remember this favor in my heart. If you have any problems in the future, you can come to me. I will take care of those who can. Yes, yes, thank you Master Du, I feel relieved with your words. Cai Fu nodded repeatedly, and even took out a prepared gift, 100-year-old Polygonum multiflorum root. This was Boss Cai's little thought. Su Tong was not polite and took the medicine directly, and once again assured Cai Fu that no matter whether it was black or white, no one would make things difficult for Hixingtang in the future, so that he could do business with confidence and boldness. With Su Tong's repeated assurances, Cai Fu finally felt relieved. Ding! Main Mission 1, Hixingtang completed. You have completed the identity task and received a very high rating, and received a privilege reward. You get a privilege reward, Coordinator. Privilege Coordinator, your team, including yours, can receive important reminders about Alliance missions in advance. You have completed the identity mission and unlocked Team Channel, Team Warehouse, Team Skills, and other privileges. The Alliance mission has been started. You can get points by completing the Alliance mission. Please check it yourself for details. At this time, Su Tong's prop book began to sound prompts. It seemed that his identity task had been overfulfilled. Although there was a slight discrepancy between this process and the task introduction, Su Tong was still very satisfied with the results. At least I don't need to be a janitor in Hixing Hall, being ordered around by the chubby shopkeeper Cai. Seeing that Mr. Du in front of him seemed to be in a good mood, Boss Cai hesitated for a moment, opened his mouth, but still didn't say anything. Su Tong noticed that Boss Cai was hesitant to speak, so he just picked up the teapot in his hand and drank heavily without any intention of asking. He just wanted to see how long Boss Cai could endure it. As expected, seeing the careless look of Mr. Du in front of him, Boss Cai could only bite his head and said proactively, Master Du, there is one more thing I want to ask you for help with. Our boss got a batch of antiques in China not long ago. You also know that the current domestic environment is too chaotic. The boss wants to send this batch of antiques over. I am worried that something will go wrong, so you want to ask me for help? Yes, yes, these cultural relics are the treasures of our Chinese people, left behind by our ancestors. It would be a pity if they were destroyed. Cai Fu nodded repeatedly. In fact, this was the boss's purpose of sending Du Nanan to Hong Kong. I just didn't expect that things would change so quickly. I waited at the pier for a whole day but didn't see Du Nanan. When I met him, he was already the influential man in the new territories, Mr. Du. The identity changes between the two before and after are two completely different attitudes. Okay, time and place, I will personally take over this matter for you. Su Tong raised his brows slightly and nodded in agreement without saying a word. The reason why he was so bold was because the prompt sounded in the prop book. Alliance Mission 1, Escort National Treasure. Mission requirements: escort the national treasure into the port and protect the safety of the national treasure. Successful mission, bonus points for all members. Mission failed, 20% of Alliance points deducted. Privilege Coordinator: there are a lot of fish and arowanas at the pier, you may want to go and check it out in advance, you may get unexpected harvests. Different from those missions in normal times, this mission is an Alliance mission. It seems that besides myself, there will be others involved. Of course, there will inevitably be enemy and Alliance players. This inevitably made Su Tong still feel a little hungry and thirsty. He also wanted to know the strength of these alliances and the strength of the enemy alliances he faced. Okay, tomorrow night at 3 o'clock in the morning, we will meet you at the dock. When Cai Fu saw Su Tong's promise, he quickly agreed on the time and place. After everything was said, Cai Fu wisely stood up and left. Aben, send Boss Cai off for me. After Su Tong signaled a bin to see off the guests, he called out the props book. I saw an extra page of points table in the prop book. This is the alliance points table. Although we are an alliance, everyone's performance is different. In the end, you will receive corresponding rewards based on your points ranking. When I looked at it, I saw that there were already two people's names on it. One was called Tai Xiao and the other was Guo Xiang. What fake names! Behind the code names of the two people, there is a number each, one is 300 points, the other is 200 points, which should be the so-called alliance points. Su Tong took a cursory look at the rules next to him. Points will be earned for completing alliance tasks and personal tasks. The higher the points, the higher the reward after final calculation. At the same time, if the scenario world ends this time, when determining victory or defeat, the overall alliance points will be used as the calculation standard. The loser with a low score will be deprived of the confrontation rewards in the scenario world even if he completes the personal task, and can only obtain a small part of the personal rewards. There is a very interesting rule here. If you kill an enemy allied player, you can get all the points from the enemy allied player. The rule seemed fine, but Su Tong looked at them for a moment and only saw two words: bloody. The rules of this game are complete and are designed to encourage players on both sides to fight at all costs. It almost eliminates the possibility of players from both sides joining forces. This inevitably reminds Su Tong of the ancient Roman gladiatorial arena, and they are the protagonists in this gladiatorial match, but he is very curious, who is the spectator of this gladiatorial match? Ding, please enter your identity code. At this time, the prompt from the prop book came again, and Su Tong habitually sent the name of an acquaintance, Li Bo. But then I thought about it, this guy Li Bo had already joined the team. Well, we can't let this guy find out that he has always done bad things in his name, which is not conducive to team harmony. Thinking of this, Su Tong changed his name to Tong Yanwuji. After inputting, his ranking also appeared on the standings, and as soon as he entered the list, he directly received 500 points. The latecomer came to the top and simply left the two people on the list far away. Obviously, the 500 points should be related to the evaluation of one's own identity mission. There are only 3 people on the standings now, and Su Tong estimates that the others have not completed their identity tasks. Grandpa, let me do this kind of thing tomorrow night. Abin walked back from the door at this time, wanting to seize the opportunity to show off his abilities. However, Su Tong took out the cigarette stick from the props book and put some shredded tobacco on it. Abin immediately brought the match forward. Only after Su Tong blew out a puff of smoke did he hear Su Tong whisper, "No, this is come on, don't get involved, I have another thing to tell you." As he spoke, he whispered a few words in Abin's ear, and Abin immediately became happy when he heard this. "Don't worry about this, murder and arson are my specialty." At the same time, on the pier on the other side, a young man and woman were walking leisurely on the river bank. The man was wearing a mix suit and a watch. He had his head parted in the middle and looked like a rich man. The woman next to her is wearing a light yellow dress, with short black hair, almond-shaped eyes, and willow eyebrows. She is dressed like a new era woman, adding a bit of heroism. The two of them walked along the edge of the pier, looking like a golden boy and a beautiful girl, causing pedestrians on the roadside to look sideways from time to time. Even the workers on the pier would inevitably show envy when they saw the two. But they only dare to envy, but they don't dare to have any delusions. 500 points, this guy has completed several tasks, how come the points rise so fast? The woman looked at the points ranking in the prop book, and her mouth turned into an O shape. It's not surprising, maybe it's because his completion level is relatively high. The man was not surprised by this, but joked, "I hope it's a big thigh, and we can have fun and relax." The woman was a little unconvinced. Identity tasks are not difficult to say, but they are not easy either. If it is just an identity task and it reaches 500 script points, that would be outrageous. After saying that, he couldn't help but complain, I was only given 300 script points for my task. I feel very perverted. Oh my god, the students here still have to take the Chinese studies test. If you hadn't secretly helped me, I might not have even given the task want to finish. The woman thought of her identity and mission and cried out that she was unlucky. She thought it would not be difficult to play the role of a student, but an entrance exam almost confused her. Who knows that in this outdated era, school exams are even worse than the real college entrance exam. Disaster. Thanks to the props before entering, our identities were bound together, so there wasn't much of a gap. The man shouted that he was lucky, and at the same time complained, but I am really not used to the role of this rich young man. As they talked, the two of them drifted away. Little did they know that as soon as they left, a man on the pier below raised his head with resentment and muttered cursingly, "Bah, damn, a rich man can't even act, so he might as well be. Let's change it, I deserve to be a donkey messenger." "Coolie Chiang, what are you muttering about? Hurry up, there are still a few shipments of goods ahead." "Hey, okay, come on, come on." Coolie Chiang had a smile on his face, and he had already sworn in his heart that he would kill the supervisor first when he completed his identity mission. The supervisor had no idea who he had offended. He was still cursing and greeting the Coolie family, but when he turned around, he showed an understanding smile on his face. "Ouch, Brother Ken." Several people in gray police uniforms looked over from a distance. The supervisor immediately stepped forward and quietly handed over a thick stack of silver coins. Seeing the silver dollars delivered to him, the police officer, who was called Brother Ken, naturally put the money into his pocket. "Do your job well and don't make trouble." Okay, don't worry, I can cover this place." Brother Ken nodded, looked around the pier, and then led the people away. As he walked, he muttered to himself, "It seems that being a cop is not bad, but I don't know where my head is now." "I don't care." The boss said, "Just let me play my role honestly." Li Bo made up his mind and led his people to continue looking for oil and water from house to house. He would be greedy and take whatever he could, and his life was quite enjoyable. After strolling along the street for a long time, Li Bo already had a lot of chicken, duck, and fish in his hands, and of course there was a bulging money bag. It was a really comfortable life. "Boss, wonton noodles." After walking all the way down, Li Bo was also tired. He glanced at the noodle shop in front of him and immediately sat down with the group of people. When the boss saw this, he could only scold himself with a grimace and secretly cursed himself for being unlucky, then picked up the wonton noodles and sent them over. Although the noodles are simple, the ingredients are very sophisticated. The wontons with thin skin and large fillings are 3 fat and 7 thin. Chicken soup, salt, light soy sauce, fish sauce, pepper, and sesame oil are boiled over high heat and poured into the noodles. The fragrance is attractive. Although the noodles looked as thin and soft as instant noodles, Li Bo could no longer suppress his appetite and was about to enjoy it while holding the bowl. Suddenly a hand reached over and took the noodles away from his face. "Oh, who are you humming with?" Li Bo blinked when he saw this, slapped the table and stood up. When he looked up, he saw a big and fierce face staring at him with a smile. Li Bo's aura suddenly dropped by 3 points. But when the other party spoke again, Li Bo felt ecstatic in his heart, and saw the big man in front of him grinning at him. "Fat Li, I just like your arrogance." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 833. Li Bo was startled, then his eyes lit up. "Boss. It's you." Li Bo was really surprised and happy to meet Su Tong here, and he quickly pulled Su Tong aside. "Boss, please help me, I've been here for many days, but I haven't completed my identity mission." "How many days?" When Su Tong heard this, he immediately realized that something was wrong. After asking, I found out that Li Bo had been here for a week and his mission was to be promoted to patrol sergeant. Li Bo is also a veteran. How could he not understand what it takes to get promoted in this environment? I sent the money eagerly, but there was no news. After asking, I found out that there were only 3 sergeants in the patrol department, and no one was willing to give up their position to him. Moreover, the special nature of the patrol station is that as an auxiliary police force for foreign adults, almost all its affairs are based on the faces of foreign adults. No matter how much money they send, their immediate superiors will transfer it to those foreign adults. Since giving away money doesn't work, he can only show off his abilities. As a result, Li Bo soon discovered that this path didn't work. In the new territories, the culture of the upper and lower circles is more complicated than that in the mainland. The local fishermen formed their own prefix, and the sticks on the dock also had another prefix. There are one set of rules for entering and another set of rules for going out. They are strictly managed from top to bottom. It's okay to bully the common people, but if something really happens, they might as well be able to use the prefix. To put it bluntly, they are just a bunch of decorations. They give you face by calling you sir, but if they don't give you face, they will pour oil and poison on your family the next day. Seeing Li Bo's troubled expression, Su Tong couldn't help but worry about his IQ. Although for him, just one word could make Li Bo get promoted and make a fortune, or even overfulfill the task, he had no intention of getting involved in this matter. After all, even if you are a mascot, you can't be used as a silly decoration like this. It is better to teach a man to fish than to teach him a fish. Su Tong patted his shoulder and said, "When I was young, our class teacher only brought 3 apples to every class and rewarded them to the 3 students with the best grades. I came in 4th every time and could only watch the 3 students eating the apples. Later, I was greedy, and there was nothing I could do about it. I just studied hard, and guess what? Then you also finished in the top 3 and got the apple." Li Bo blinked and said, "No." Su Tong curled his lips and said, "On the way to school, I quietly gave the 3rd place a brick." Li Bo's mouth twitched, and then he remembered that this guy was a lunatic who escaped from a mental hospital. The meaning of acting is never to let you change your skin and try to inject soul into this character. You will find that it is a kind of fun. After Su Tong said this, he didn't care whether Li Bo understood or not, and walked away while eating the bowl of wonton noodles in his hand. Before leaving, he didn't forget to shout to Li Bo, "You can give me the face money." After talking about this, if Li Bo still doesn't understand, Su Tong plans to let this fool stay as a peripheral member of the team and be the mascot for the rest of his life. Sure enough, Li Bo stayed there for a long time before he finally seemed to understand something. He raised his eyebrows slightly, turned around and paid the dough, then got up and left, excusing himself from going home in advance. As for whether he will go home or not, no one knows. On the other side, after Su Tong finished eating the wonton noodles, he found a clean place to sit down, took out the pipe, pinched a handful of shredded tobacco, and placed it in the pot. Needless to say, the cut tobacco given by this veteran tastes really good. When you take a puff, it still has a very mellow aroma in your mouth, but it is a little too strong. As the sun set, the dock was busy, but Su Tong felt relaxed as he took a break from the busy schedule. The sun shone on his cheeks, and his whole mind relaxed. A passing painter saw Su Tong sitting on a stone from a distance, and was immediately attracted by Su Tong's smoking posture. Even though Su Tong's appearance looks fierce at the moment, under the irradiation of the sun, the figure and the chimney in his hand blend into the surrounding docks. The natural feeling gives people an unprecedented sense of tranquility. It feels like you are in a noisy downtown dock, but it also has a kind of otherworldly indifference. The artist unconsciously moved his pen and ink and drew Su Tong's figure. Young man, let's take a bite, right? At this time, an old man walked up to Su Tong, stared longingly at the cigarette in Su Tong's hand, and showed a flattering smile to Su Tong. Su Tong took a look and saw that the old man looked to be in his early 60s, shirtless, with a gray belt around his waist, and a bamboo-carved cigarette rod in his hand. He looked like he was a long-time smoker. Seeing this, Su Tong grinned, took out the tobacco, pinched a handful and handed it over. Okay, okay. The old man took the cut tobacco and carefully stuffed it into the pot. After pressing the porcelain with his fingers, he lit the cut tobacco with a match and took 2 puffs. He felt very energetic. Old man, Brother Pao helped. Su Tong looked at the belt around the old man's waist that was about to turn black and asked the old man casually. Hey, Brother Pao, I'm from Shandong province. I was on the run and ended up in this ghost place in a daze. The old man talked about his own story. His hometown was in turmoil. He wanted to run to the south of the Yangtze River, but he fell asleep on the train and arrived in Shanghai as soon as he opened his eyes. He thought it would be the same wherever he ran, but just to make fun of himself. After eating, I wiped the floor of other people's ships. As the ship sailed, I was taken to this place. When I got off the boat, I saw that this place was not bad. I relied on my ability to punt and fish, so I just made a living at the dock. When I was busy, I moved goods, and when I was free, I fished and sold money. If you want to survive in the dock, you must enter the name, even if it is in name only. If you pay a rent every month, you can always survive. Originally, the 2 children fled together, but they were afraid that I would be a drag on them, so they abandoned me on the way. I don't know if the 2 children are still alive. The old man said it pitifully, but in his heart he was not surprised at all by what his 2 sons did, and he even thought about them in his heart. All I can say is, pity the hearts of parents in the world. Uncle Zhang. At this time, a young man ran over panting, Uncle Zhang, someone over there wants to charter a boat. The old man looked in the direction pointed by the young man and saw 2 men standing by the dock watching something. Su Tong glanced at them and immediately noticed something was wrong with these 2 people. After activating the life icon and taking another look, it turns out that the luck and aura of these 2 people are not ordinary people at all. Judging from the blood and aura on their bodies, they are at least at the Taoist level. They are obviously 2 players. When he heard that the 2 wanted to charter a boat, the old man hesitated, but it's getting dark today, so late. Uncle Zhang, they are very generous. I saw business cards from the Japanese Chamber of Commerce on their wallets. They should be businessmen. After hearing the young man's words, the old man couldn't help but look a little confused. It's not that he doesn't want to make money. Those Japanese people are always very generous with their money when doing business. This trip can be worth at least half of his fishing money. But when he fled to this place, he had a deep understanding of the sinister nature of people's hearts along the way. He went out to sea late at night, committing adultery or stealing. He was so generous, and he probably didn't pay for his life. I'll go with you and give me half of the money you make. At this time, Su Tong, who was sitting next to the old man, suddenly spoke. After hearing this, the old man turned around and looked at Su Tong's face, and instantly felt at ease. You know how to swim. My dogs can't swim with me. When the old man heard this, he patted his thigh and took Su Tong to the pier. The 2 Japanese businessmen seemed to be a little impatient with waiting. When they saw the old man and Su Tong approaching, they first looked at Su Tong. Su Tong immediately grinned shyly at the 2 of them. That shy expression was like Ruhuaqiang's shy smile, which made people's scalp numb. A faint light appeared in the pupils of the man on the left. After glancing around Su Tong, he nodded to his companion to make sure there was no problem. What problem can there be? If a guy who has entered the Taoist realm can see some land gods and see some tricks, then there is a problem. I saw the man on the right handing a thick stack of silver dollars to the old man. We need to pick up a batch of goods. You, please take us outside to pick up the goods. You will be indispensable for the benefits after the event is completed. A thick stack of silver dollars was equivalent to 2 years of fishing. Although the old man was wary of such a large amount of money falling into his hands, he was finally tempted. After taking the money, he took them onto the small boat aside. The old man stood at the bow and Su Tong stood at the stern. After untying the rope, they pushed the bamboo poles in their hands, and the boat sailed along the sea. Hoo-hoo! As soon as the fishing boat left the harbor, the sea breeze began to blow in our face. After the day got colder, the sea breeze also blew over like a sharp knife. After putting on the clothes, the two people looked as usual. Emira Sakata looked at Su Tong from time to time. On the side, Inu Mersai smiled calmly and said, "Jongjun, don't be so nervous, my eye skills have never made mistakes, don't worry." Emira Sakata nodded when he heard this, "Be careful and you won't make a big mistake." Seeing how serious he was, Inu Murai couldn't help but stretch out and lie down on the chair in the cabin, with his feet crossed and his legs crossed, looking carefree. Sakata didn't like him either, so he just closed his eyes and rested. "Boatman, stay here." Seeing that the port was no longer in sight, Emira Sakata suddenly spoke and signaled the boatman to stop. "Stop here." The old man looked around and didn't see the cargo ship, so he asked, "How long will it take to wait?" "You're in a hurry." Inu Murase opened his eyelids and glanced at the old man. Suddenly the old man became nervous and hurriedly explained with a smile, "No need to worry, no need to worry, it's just that the wind and waves are strong here, I'm afraid you two may catch a cold." "Humph, just wait here honestly, it will be of great benefit to you." Inu Murase snorted coldly, which made the old man dare not speak. Time passed minute by minute, about half an hour later, and suddenly a light gradually brightened on the sea in the distance. "Coming." Inu Mersai's pupils were slightly tightened, and there were strange textures in the depths of his eyes. Su Tong sat at the stern of the boat, raised his head and took a look. He saw a cargo ship slowly approaching on the sea. There were several black shadows flashing on the cargo ship. Looking at the Kimin with his life eye, he could see the auras of many people around this freighter. Interesting. It seems that there are also players guarding this freighter. They should be players in the same alliance as myself. It just so happens that I can take the opportunity to observe and see how strong these players are. Thinking that Su Tong had already made up his mind, he would wait and see what happens. Seeing the freighter getting closer and closer, the sound of a flute was suddenly heard on the sea. After hearing the sound of the flute, Inu and Murase looked at each other and said, "Do it." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 834. The moment the two of them spoke, Inu Murase stepped on the water and ran straight to the freighter. "Ah! Monster!" Hearing the screams behind him, Emira Sakata looked back and saw that the man on the stern had turned pale and was slumped on the deck. His legs were trembling and he was kicking back, but he seemed to be unable to exert any strength. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Emira Sakata's face. "He is not a monster, you see, I am." I saw Emira Sakata leaping up, and the surrounding sea water flowed upstream, wrapping around Emira Sakata's body. Roar! With an angry roar, the water curtain exploded, and a centipede covered in grey armor poked its head out of the water curtain. Seeing this scene, the old man standing on the deck turned around and plunged into the water, hoping to escape through the water. Under the water, a red tail whipped up. "Ah!" I saw the old man being rolled up from the water, and after letting out a scream in mid-air, he was swallowed by the centipede. "Kaka kaka." After a while of chewing and swallowing, the old man's voice suddenly stopped. After tasting the blood food, Emurasakata squinted his head and looked down at the man on the deck, only to see that the man was so frightened that he lost his voice. Ah, ah, ah. On that face full of flesh, the facial features were all twisted together, as if someone had strangled the throat. He opened his mouth wide, but it was difficult to make a sound. In the end, his eyes rolled back and he fell unconscious on the deck. Past. Seeing the pained and frightened expression on this mortal's face, Emurasakata was extremely excited at this moment. If time allowed, he really wanted to have a good time, but at this time, the siren of the freighter in the distance had already sounded. Seeing this, Emurasakata twisted the tentacles above his head. "Let's continue playing when I come back." As he spoke, his huge body dived into the sea water, creating a huge wave of water and rushing towards the freighter. The piercing siren echoed over the freighter. Call out. Accompanied by a rapid sound of breaking through the sky, an arrow burning with flames suddenly lit up the entire sky. On the deck, a long-haired woman stood holding a long bow. The moment the woman let go of the bowstring, the flaming arrow turned into a fire phoenix, flapping its wings and flying toward the water in front of her. Cut. Looking at the incoming arrows, Inu Murase stood with his feet on the surface of the waves, fell to the sky, held one hand on his waist, a short knife flew out with a buzzing sound, and slashed across the arrows. Boom! Suddenly the arrow burst into flames and was instantly cut in half. At this time, more than a dozen soldiers wearing future equipment walked out on the deck, holding heavy firearms in both hands, aiming at Inu Murai on the water and pulling the trigger. Bang 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 bang. Seeing this, Inu Murase's hand was replaced by a slender sword. Holding the knife in both hands, he slashed around the body. Suddenly, countless knife lights appeared, surrounding the whole body, forming an inseparable wall of swords. The densely packed bullets suddenly exploded with dazzling flames around Inu Mursai, but these bullets did not harm a single hair of Inu Mursai. Boom! At this time, a huge black shadow emerged from the water and exploded into huge waves. A huge centipede twisted its body, and under the cover of the water waves, it opened its mouth and spit out countless black venomous stingers. Ah 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 ah! The screams of panic resounded throughout the freighter, and the sharp stingers could easily penetrate the deck, so that even those hiding in the cabin of the freighter were not spared, and they suffered heavy casualties in an instant. And those soldiers with top-notch equipment in reality didn't even have a chance to groan. There was a dull sound of popping flesh, and each one fell like a blood bag in a pool of blood on the ground. Swish swish. A nimble figure flashed quickly, and every step of the woman on the deck accurately avoided the poisonous sting aimed at her. At the same time, he bent his bow and nocked an arrow, and the 3 arrows formed a zigzag shape and shot at the centipede monster Emurasakata had transformed into. "Your opponent is me." A sharp shout came, and Inu Murase was seen jumping onto the deck, holding the sword in his hand. Amidst the sharp shout, the figure had already reached the woman. Show sword dragon strike. Inu Murai's pupils were flashing with fluorescent light. As the sword from his abdomen was swung from bottom to top, his whole body shone with golden light, and a half-moon-shaped sword light seemed to cut the surrounding time in half. There was a moment of surprise on the woman's face. She quickly activated the item card, tapped her foot, and her figure quickly moved more than 10 meters away in an instant. However, the moment the woman's toes hit the ground, the sword light that had been dodged just now struck her head. Puff! In an instant, the sword light shattered the bow body and cut into the flesh. The bright red blood bloomed into brilliant flowers in the darkness, as if the world became quiet at this moment. Buzz! 10 meters away, Inu Murase sheathed his sword, and the blade made a ding sound before the woman's body fell to the ground. Roar! Boom! Emurasakata's body hit the cargo ship heavily on the sea, and countless sharp tentacles penetrated into the deck, easily tearing a hole in the deck. Ah! The crew members hiding on the deck looked at the horrific scene in front of them and let out sharp screams. It's noisy. Emura Sakata looked at the frightened expressions on these people's faces, but he didn't feel any joy in his heart. Instead, he felt that the panic on these people's faces was just like dealing with him. Instead of making him feel happy, he was very bored. He opened his mouth and spat out a thick poisonous mist into the open gap. For a moment, the entire cabin was enveloped in black mist, and the screams that bored him suddenly stopped. Then Emura Sakata spit out his slender mouthpart and probed it into the cabin. He sucked it in suddenly, and a thick pink liquid was sucked into the mouthpart along with the poisonous mist. Only then did Emura Sakata let out a satisfied laugh, and then his huge body jumped suddenly, quickly returned to his human form in mid-air, and landed steadily on the deck. How's the harvest? Emura Sakata licked the remaining blood on the corner of his lips and asked Inu Mursai. Inu Murase stepped forward and already had a prop book in his hand. After flipping through a few pages, he took out 2 prop cards. It's very average. This woman's points are too few. It is the minimum standard to complete the identity task. After saying that, the 2 of them walked into the cabin. At this moment, the cabin was still filled with a sour smell, but strangely, it was very clean inside. The imagined scenes of blood splashing and broken meat flying everywhere did not appear. There were only neat clothes on the ground, and not even a body was seen. The 2 walked to the cargo box, opened it, and saw an enamel revolving bottle inside. Looking at this exquisite porcelain bottle, the 2 of them smiled knowingly. Just as Inu Murai stretched out his hand to take out the bottle, his ears suddenly moved and he heard a crisp click sound from under the bottle, and his expression suddenly changed. Run! Boom! In an instant, a bright light burst out from the cargo ship, and then the entire sea surface quickly vaporized under the strong light, and a huge shock wave hit, making the sea rough and the waves rolling. On the small boat in the distance, a pair of cold eyes penetrated the strong light in front of them, and at a glance, 2 other figures were seen galloping towards the direction of the explosion of the cargo ship. No. There is another person. On the small boat, the pair of eyes watching the fire from across the shore quickly found their target, and then there was a splash, and there was only an unmanned fishing boat floating alone on the rough sea. The firelight dissipated, and countless fragments of cargo ships were floating on the sea. A few bubbles of Gilealug popped up from the water. As the water splashed down, a burnt insect corpse floated on the water. Inu Mursai lying on the insect corpse with a embarrassed face, he realized that he had been careless and underestimated the enemy this time. When he raised his head, he saw 2 black figures heading towards him, one from the left and the other from the right. Seeing this, Inu Murase decisively chose the figure on the left to face him head-on, the sword in his hand suddenly glowing with dazzling blood. Living Sword Dragon Strike? It was the same move as before, but the sword skills it inspired were completely different. As the blade was swung, Inu Murase's body was covered in bright red blood, forming a set of ferocious samurai armor. At the same time, the moment he waved it, an overwhelming aura enveloped Inu Murase and charged forward. Huh! The figure in the darkness let out a cry of surprise, but when faced with Inu Murase's terrifying offensive, instead of panicking, there was a look of joy in his eyes. With a shake of his arms, a shining silver hook appeared in his hand. The Wugo swung, as if it was like a hook. As he swung, a terrifying martial arts will burst out from the man's body, and his figure was like a big dragon colliding with Inu Murase. Boom! A deafening buzzing sound erupted between the 2, and Inu Murase was suddenly surprised. He did not expect that the other party could easily block his sword. Let me help you. At this time, another person came from behind Inu Murase. This person held a hammer as big as a lion's head in both hands. When he swung it, there was a sound of wind and thunder. He aimed it at Inu Murase's back and smashed it down. Ah! Inu Murase was shocked when he saw this. He suddenly looked at the dead insects under the water and cursed in his heart, "Sakata! You are such a coward. If you look closely, you will see that this dead insect is just a shell. The real Emura Sakata has already shed his shell and turned into a black python, quickly diving into the water and escaping." Inu Murai's original intention was to attract firepower so as to create a sneak attack opportunity for Emura Sakata, but he didn't expect that this coward would betray himself and see himself being attacked from both sides. A patch of cherry blossoms quietly appeared behind Inu Mursai. When the sledgehammer fell, it suddenly shone with light and countless cherry blossoms burst out to hold the sledgehammer. "Sakura-kun!" Seeing the figure in the cherry blossoms behind him, Inu Mursai felt very excited. "It's not a good time to stay here for a long time. Fight out and leave quickly." The man whom Inu Murase called Sakuragi-kun said in a low voice, and took out a paper fan in his hand. When he waved it, cherry blossoms fell all over the sky. Countless cherry blossoms formed a wall in front of the two of them. Only when the cherry blossoms dispersed did they realize Inu Murase's figure has disappeared. At this moment, in the sea water, a black python quietly poked half of its head out. When he saw it, he couldn't help but cursed, "Bah, I knew you were following behind." After he finished cursing, Emura Sakata wanted to dive into the sea again and wait for an opportunity to escape. However, at this moment, Emura Sakata suddenly felt a weight behind him, as if something had grabbed his tail. He turned around and looked at him in confusion, and a face full of flesh appeared in his erect pupils. His face said, "Hey, monster, eat my sword." Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 835. Scare. Seeing the face that suddenly appeared in front of him, Emura Sakata's eyes widened. "Isn't this that boatman just now? Why did he appear here without anyone noticing?" Before Emura Sakata could understand what was going on, Su Tong had already summoned the Pure Yang sword, swung the blade, and struck Emura Sakata's head. Sensing the impending crisis, Emura Sakata's huge body suddenly turned into a ball of black mist. Yin deficiency technique can make the body quickly turn into nothingness and become immune to physical damage. At the same time as the body turned into nothingness, the body quickly rolled towards Su Tong. However, what Emura Sakata didn't expect was that when the Pure Yang sword penetrated his void body, the Pure Yang energy rippling on the blade suddenly cut off the black mist, and a burning sensation like a fire came, making Emura Sakata stiffened and let out a low roar in pain. "Asshole!" Emura Sakata screamed strangely, and his whole body gathered into a ball. In a moment, armor with spikes grew out, and his body immediately became extremely huge. It looks like a fish but not a fish, with a dragon's head and a pig's nose. It is 100 meters long. Its roar resounds across the sky. Its scarlet scales are covered with many white hairs and it has 4 thick sharp claws. It can turn the world upside down in a single swing. Su Tong tapped his toes, and the surrounding water formed an undercurrent around his feet, quickly pulling him away from the monster. Looking up and down with curious eyes, he felt that this guy's abilities were the same as MRS Enman's that he met back then, and he was a player of the transformation system. Change-type players are not only strong in combat, but also have extremely terrifying vitality, especially the guy in front of him, who was still alive and kicking after being struck by his Pure Yang sword. "Kill you." The water was churning, and Emura Sakata let out a low roar. He waved his terrifying claws and kicked hard, turning the entire water into a hazy mess. His huge body roared towards him like a sharp sword. This is the monster dragon ray beast. As a monster transformer, this is Emura Sakata's biggest support, enough to allow him to leapfrog and kill the enemy. It's just that Emura Sakata obviously overestimated himself. When Su Tong saw this, he put away the Pure Yang sword in his hand, his fingertips slid lightly, and a golden light suddenly flew out from his fingertips. It is the innate divine talisman, the Shillong talisman. The golden light swirled rapidly in the sea water, like a golden dragon, quickly wrapping around Giankan Sakata's body. Emura Sakata didn't care at first, thinking that he could tear this thin silk thing easily. But when he twisted his sharp claws and pulled hard, his heart suddenly sank. He found that the thing was getting tighter and tighter, and it's impossible to break free. What the hell is this? Realizing that he couldn't break free, the red scales on Emura Sakata's body trembled, and traces of lightning spread out from his body. For a moment, the entire sea was covered in a red light. Oh, you can also play with thunder. Seeing lightning flashing around him, Su Tong slapped his forehead and saw the little fat man emerge from above his head. Pop! The little fat man patted his belly with his little hands, and strange textures appeared on the little fat man's body. Click! A bolt of lightning as thick as a water tank struck from the sky, and penetrated the sea like a sharp sword that opened the sky. Suddenly the waves tore apart, and the entire sea suddenly turned into a dazzling white light. Huh! The two figures who had just climbed onto the pier in the distance suddenly turned around. Complex textures appeared in Inu Mursai's pupils, and he said in surprise, "There is still someone fighting. Who is it?" But soon he realized who was in trouble, and sneered, "This bastard Sakata looks like he is in big trouble." There was a hint of schadenfreude in Inu Murai's words. After all, he was tricked by Sakata just now, and this guy actually left him and ran for his life. I'm afraid he didn't expect that he would be in bad luck now. Inu, wait here, I'll go take a look. Hearing this, Inu Murasei suddenly raised his head, looked at the man beside him, and said with an unhappy expression, "Are you going to save this coward?" Sakuragi Sime shook his head. He would not like cowards, but he was very interested in strong men. The reason why he took Inu Murai away quickly just now was because he noticed a very strong aura around him. But he searched all around and couldn't find the location of this aura, which meant that the other party was stronger than himself. At this moment, the other party seemed to have appeared. Sakuragi Sime just wanted to give it a try and see what the other party's strength was. What is the strength? After saying that, Sakuragi Sime's body turned into broken cherry blossoms and disappeared into the air. Rumble! Thunder struck one after another, and the entire sea surface was shrouded in evaporating water mist. Crash! A big wave rolled, and large red fish scales emerged from the murky water. For a moment, a huge creature gradually emerged from the water. Su Tong stepped lightly on this guy's body with one foot. Looking at the bloody mess that was no longer able to struggle, it looked at Su Tong bitterly, and its body gradually withdrew from the demonized state. But until he returned to his human form, the dragon-binding talisman on his body still bound him tightly, making him unable to move for a while. The innate talisman is indeed domineering. But he deserves it, not to mention that he has entered the Taoist realm. Even if he is an enlightened heavenly being, it will take a lot of effort to break free of the Kaisha dragon talisman. Su Tong didn't intend to kill him, otherwise the first sword would have only required a blast of pure yang sword energy to kill him. He knelt down and asked, "I can let you go, but you have to tell me how many people you have entered the script world this time." Although he didn't mind killing this guy, he wanted to know more about the number of enemies and allies this time and their mission information. Emura Sakata hesitated for a moment when he heard this. Although betraying the alliance was disgraceful, in the end it was just a play. Even if it failed, it was always better than losing his life. But just when Emura Sakata was about to submit the surrender order, a cherry blossom quietly fell down. "Your Majesty, please show mercy." A wisp of breeze blew from the sea, carrying countless cherry blossoms and scattering them down. Su Tong looked back and saw a young man running towards him on a large field of cherry blossoms. The pinnacle of enlightenment. Su Tong's eyes glanced at the young man, a cold look flashed in his eyes, and he summoned the pure yang sword, indicating that he had murderous intentions. Sakura-kun. Seeing the figure of the visitor, Emura Sakata's face suddenly lit up with joy. However, at this moment, a strange feeling hit his heart. The cherry blossoms falling in front of him, Emura Sakata's eyes danced like an elf, revealing a sense of smart beauty. Buzz. Just as he was stunned, the cherry blossoms in his eyes suddenly flashed with dazzling light, and a figure flew out from the cherry blossoms, raising his palm and aiming it at Emura Sakata's forehead. Court death. Su Tong didn't expect that the other party had such a weird ability. He was caught off guard and slashed down with his sword. He saw a sword energy like a huge white rainbow under the blessing of the pure yang sword. Boom. The sea surface boiled for a moment, and it was cut into two parts with a slash of sword light. Also split in two is Emura Sakata's body. But the figure that emerged from the cherry blossoms just now disappeared strangely. Illusion. Su Tong couldn't help being a little surprised when he saw this. When he looked back, he found that Sakuragi Simei's figure had also disappeared. Su Tong couldn't help but feel annoyed in his heart. He was also a little surprised that the opponent's magic technique was so magical that he could actually do it. Change the shape and change the situation, changing the situation. At this time, the surrounding cherry blossoms were flying down, forming a line of small words under Su Tong's feet: "Inconvenience today, see you later." Seeing this, Su Tong stepped on it, and the rolling pure yang fire suddenly incinerated the surrounding cherry blossoms into ashes. Looking back, I saw that Emura Sakata's body had sunk into the sea, and his prop book was floating on the water. He reached out and grabbed the prop book in his hand. After taking a look at it, he pulled out the only 2 high-level prop cards in it, and also gained 300 alliance points. In the first encounter, I can't say that I took advantage, but I can't say that I suffered a loss either. "Boss, is it you?" There was a shout in the distance. Su Tong turned around and saw a small boat cutting through the waves. There were several people standing on the boat looking towards the side with strict expectations. The middle-aged man at the head waved the wu hook in his hand, and it was none other than Gu Zibai. Seeing this, Su Tong stepped on the water and walked to the boat. He looked at Gu Zibai and said with a smile, "If it's not me, who else could it be?" With that said, he jumped into the boat. "Ha, let me tell you, it must be you who made such a big noise. Where was that guy just now? Was he killed by you?" Gu Zibai looked at the turbid water and asked Su Tong. Su Tong nodded and didn't say much about this matter. He just asked, "Are you the ones responsible for escorting the treasures?" "Yes. Those are the things." Gu Zibai pointed at the box on the ship. Su Tong walked over and opened the box. He saw various rare treasures placed in the box, and the most eye-catching one was a bronze dragon head. "Why is this thing here?" Su Tong was a little surprised. He reached out and took out the faucet. He put it on his hand and took a look. He felt that the faucet was very heavy, and it was definitely not an ordinary copper product. He thought in his mind, "This thing can't be from the 12 Copperheads dragon head. I believe it is self-evident how important the 12 bronze heads are to the Chinese people." However, in reality, there has never been a specific explanation of the whereabouts of the dragon heads. Su Tong was inevitably shocked when he saw this dragon head appearing here. He tried to throw the object into the prop book to verify its authenticity, but the prop book could not accept the object. Special items cannot be converted into prop cards. The cold prompt made him a little disappointed. Seeing that he couldn't use the prop book, Su Tong didn't give up and simply used his life Ikemen to look at it. At this glance, he really saw some tricks. I saw a strange aura wrapped around the dragon's head. I couldn't tell what it was, but it felt a little familiar. For a moment, Su Tong's eyes suddenly flashed, "It's dragon energy." That's right, it's a wisp of dragon energy. Although it's not much, it is hidden in this dragon head. As soon as I thought about it, I felt relieved. Although I don't know why this wisp of dragon energy is hidden in this bronze dragon head, the 12 heads should be some kind of treasure in the palace, suppressing the luck of the palace. It's a pity that the old woman in the Manking dynasty is really too stretched. The Qing dynasty has exhausted its energy. No matter how many counterweights there are, it won't have any effect at all. After all, the town object can suppress luck, but it also requires luck. Head, let me introduce you. This is Dibbo, who is our ally. At this time, Gu Zibai introduced the man next to Su Tong. The other party raised his hand to Su Tong and smiled, haha, big brother, just call me Lao Di. I'm just a dawdling. I didn't expect to meet a real boss here. Dibbo gave people a cheerful feeling as soon as he opened his mouth. No wonder Gu Zibai took the initiative to introduce him to him. You're welcome, just call me Hai Sheng. We can all sit on the same boat and join hands. Su Tong said a few words of anger to Dibbo. After asking later, I found out that Gu Zibai and the others had been here for a few days, and their identity mission this time was to escort the set of national treasures. It turned out that there was a girl named Xiao Fang who had completed her identity mission, but was killed by the other party with a single blow. Well, our opponents are very strong this time. Su Tong said thoughtfully, thinking of Sakuragi Sime just now. Although his level was not as good as his own, Su Tong's weird ability made Su Tong feel troubled. And the realm does not mean it is absolute. The other party is already at the peak of enlightenment and may enter the path of killing at any time. The most important thing is that I don't know how many such masters there are among those Japanese devils. Thinking of these problems, Su Tong couldn't help but feel a very bad feeling in his heart. We rowed the boat all the way back to the pier. As soon as we landed, we saw another young man and woman standing on the pier waiting for them. Seeing the boat approaching, the woman quickly waved, took out a flashlight, and made several signals with 2 long and 1 short lights. It's my captain. When Dibbo saw this, his face suddenly showed joy and he quickly responded with a flashlight. After the 3 of them landed, the man and woman also approached. Su Tong looked around and found that the woman was still injured, and the young man next to him still had some bruises on his face. The 2 of them had obviously just finished. Came over for the fight. How about it? No problem. The woman asked Dibbo. It's not a big problem, thanks to these 2 brothers, otherwise I might be finished. Dibbo took advantage of the opportunity and quickly introduced Su Tong and Gu Zibai to his captain. You are the 5-member team from before. The woman's eyes widened, and she generously extended her hand to Su Tong and introduced herself. My name is Guo Xiang, and this is Iron Hand. We are the Ling team, affiliated to Momin, one of the 6 regiments. Momin is one of the 6 regiments. Although there is no powerful person with the title of Er Shen, being able to be called one of the 6 regiments is enough to show its strength. Even if it is the opponent's deputy regiment, its strength cannot be underestimated. When Su Tong heard this, he immediately thought of the other 2 people on the standings. It turned out to be this pair. He nodded and said, Chi Men. Tong Yanwuji. Yeah, it's you. Hearing Su Tong's name, Guo Xiang was shocked. He didn't expect that the person in front of him was Tong Yanwuji. Then Guo Xiang suddenly realized that the name of the Kimen team was very unfamiliar. Could it be a new team? Haven't joined the other 6 groups yet? It's no wonder she thinks this way. In today's player circle, the 6th group occupies huge resources. To put it bluntly, it has formed monopoly capital. If other players want to climb up, it will be difficult to avoid the existence of the 6th group. Either join, either. Ahem, this is not the place to talk. Let's find a place to talk slowly. The young man next to the woman suggested, not forgetting to look down at the dock and shouting, you come too, we are all on the same team, and joining forces is the way out. After hearing the words fall, not long after, a thin man wearing a straw hat emerged from the corner. The man was shirtless and had a white rope belt tied around his waist. At a glance, he knew that he was from the dock. Okay, is there anything delicious? I'm almost starving. The man jumped onto the pier, patted his belly, and introduced himself, Medicine Master, I am alone, without a team. As soon as these words came out, everyone was inevitably a little hungry. After all, at this level of strength, no matter whether one was good at physical melee combat or not, being able to eat was a typical negative effect. Let me make the arrangements. I happen to be the person in charge of receiving these national treasures. Su Tong said and led everyone in the direction of the Yuxing gang. When everyone arrived at Yuxing gang, everyone was shocked. The big brother who was working at the dock stared at the mansion in front of him. He was so greedy that his saliva almost flowed out. He muttered, I'll go, this is too unfair. You are either students or bosses. You are enjoying the good times, damn, I'm the only one who works as a coolie at the dock. Ha ha ha, I'm not afraid of not having anything to eat now. Gu Zibai felt so happy seeing his boss having such a good time, and now he could take advantage. Su Tong gave the order, and soon a large table of sumptuous dinner was ready. For a moment, no one could think of talking and just ate with their bowls and chopsticks in hand. The maid serving the food on the side was frightened, thinking to herself, my dear, these are simply a bunch of hungry ghosts. The food on this big table was served front and back, and was devoured in the blink of an eye. Su Tong even opened his arms from left to right, stuffing all kinds of food into his mouth. I can't help it, I get hungry too quickly. It stands to reason that land gods should eat the wind and drink the dew, but in fact it is just a fart. The reason for eating wind and drinking dew is that ordinary grains are harmful to the Tao body, but I am practicing Yinshu. My body urgently needs a lot of flesh and blood to replenish nutrition at all times. There is no need to worry about damaging my Tao body when the sun is shining. If you don't believe it, try something like dragon rice instead, and see if those land gods eat it or not. The group of people ate like a whirlwind, and in a blink of an eye they had finished the table, enough for 30 people. This was only half full, but there was nothing I could do about it. The backyard cook was really busy preparing so many meals. When everyone saw this, they could only smash their mouths and look at the empty plates in front of them with a little regret. After several people introduced each other, everyone had an impression of each other. In fact, apart from the pharmacist, there are two teams, one is Su Tong's side, and the other is Guo Xiang's side. They entered earlier than Su Tong, so except for Dibbo, everyone else had completed their identity tasks. When Su Tong asked who the two had fought with before, Guo Xiang did not hide it and said bluntly, they are two little devils, one is good at Onmyoji, one is good at summoning Shikigami, one is at the enlightenment level, and the other is at the entry level. The combat power is not strong, but the techniques and Shikigami they are good at are very troublesome. Oh, it's similar here. There is a guy named Sakuragi. He may be good at some kind of illusion. After Su Tong talked about Sakuragi Simei's strength, several people were a little surprised. In fact, in this fight, they suffered the loss because of the weirdness of the opponent's spells. As long as they figured out their methods, it was not certain who would kill them next time. This is for you. Guo Xiang took out a small thing and handed it to Su Tong. Su Tong immediately became happy when he saw it. He had seen this thing when he was very young. It was called a BB machine, but it came with a small keyboard. Our team built a small transceiver satellite, but it cannot make calls. We can only use pagers to simply receive text messages so that we can communicate with each other. After speaking, Guo Xiang said a little embarrassedly, well, in addition, we want to borrow some money. As soon as these words came out, the pharmacist on the side couldn't sit still. I also want some money. Can you help me complete the identity task? In fact, when they came, the team brought some gold with them for emergencies. But after asking later, I found out that gold is very valuable, but if it is exchanged for silver rolls, it will be a huge loss. There are some things that silver coins can do, and gold can do it, but what gold can do, silver coins can't do. In addition, they spend a lot of money on food and drink every day, so they inevitably have some money on their hands. It's a small matter. I'll ask the accountant to withdraw some money from you later. Su Tong said, looking at the pharmacist again, "What is your identity and mission?" The pharmacist hurriedly said, "It's simple, just find a formal job, but the better the job, the higher the degree of completion." As he said this, the pharmacist took out some bottles and jars and gave them to everyone. Everyone took it and took a look and found that it was still a good thing. Acceleration potions, deceleration potions, etc., although they are temporary increases, the effect of the increase is quite high. Su Tong picked up a bottle and took a look at it. Suddenly he raised his eyebrows and looked sideways at the pharmacist. He suddenly remembered who this person was. "Okay, we are so destined to come thousands of miles to meet you. I didn't expect to meet you here." Su Tong narrowed his eyelids and remembered the figure who fled in embarrassment. He raised the corners of his mouth slightly and grinned at the pharmacist. "Okay, you can join my team. This is very simple." With that said, Su Tong handed over an invitation to temporarily join the team. The pharmacist didn't think much about it, he just muttered in his heart, "The name Kimon sounds so familiar." But since he was an ally and was invited to join the team, he was not afraid that the other party would harm him, so the pharmacist agreed easily. This made Guo Xiang and Tai Shaosai in their hearts as they looked at it. This pharmacist was a talent and could make this kind of potion. Even if his combat effectiveness was not high, he would be an excellent assistant in the team. Unexpectedly, Su Tong moved so quickly and directly attracted the person. However, at this moment, Yao Shi suddenly stared, with a look of surprise on his face. He did not expect that the team he randomly joined turned out to be a silver-level team. This really surprised me. At the same time, as a temporary member, Su Tong also specially opened a lot of team permissions for him. Such as Team Channel, temporarily unavailable. Team Sharing, not available yet. The most important thing is that at this time, Su Tong handed over another formal invitation, inviting him to officially join his team. Seeing this prompt, the pharmacist raised his head in confusion and saw Su Tong blinking at him. After hesitating for a while, the pharmacist weighed in his mind. A silver-level team was a team that was hard to find nowadays. After thinking for a moment, he simply chose to join with the mentality of giving it a try. Ding, you become a formal member of the Seven Gates and get the benefits of a formal member team. All kinds of benefits suddenly appeared in front of him, which made the pharmacist feel ecstatic. Especially after seeing the team warehouse, the pharmacist was petrified on the spot. 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million, hiss. My dear, I am developed. Looking at the things in the team warehouse, the pharmacist swallowed in shock. He was almost stupid. He had seen rich people, but never such rich people. And just when he was shocked, Su Tong walked up to the pharmacist at some point, gently patted the pharmacist on the shoulder with one hand, and whispered, "You can't run away this time, Cimin. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 836. Upon hearing Su Tong's name, the pharmacist's muscles suddenly stiffened and his palms began to sweat. This was unfamiliar to him, but also familiar. It was a pseudonym he once had. When someone mentioned it at this moment, the memory of this name suddenly appeared in his mind. Then think of the name of this team. Kimin, Papermaker, Mangshan, Shuigui. The pharmacist thought of that long ago world of scripts and couldn't help feeling panicked. He raised his head and struggled to squeeze out a smile that was uglier than crying, Zhao Kuangsheng. Hey, it's rare for an old friend to still think of me. Su Tong patted him on the shoulder, with the smile still on his face, but the heavy weight of his palm was like hitting the pharmacist's heart, making the pharmacist's heart tremble and fall to the bottom. Hey, let's talk about it later. Before the pharmacist could explain, Su Tong interrupted him and signaled a Ben to take Guo Xiang and the others to the accounting room to withdraw money. Then let's go first. If you have any questions, you can contact us directly. Guo Xiang and the other two people obviously noticed that something was not right in the atmosphere. Although they admired the assistant talent of the pharmacist, it would not be cost-effective to offend Su Tong because of this person. Especially in this key scenario world of alliance battles, a powerful ally with huge resource advantages is much more important than an auxiliary. After the three people left and Su Tong waved away the others, Su Tong, Yao Shi, and Gu Zibai were left in the hall. Su Tong did not rush to settle accounts with the pharmacist. Instead, he sat on the sofa, took out the tobacco rod, pinched a handful of shredded tobacco, and placed it in the pot little by little. He moved slowly, making the sound in the room eerily quiet. But this quietness made the pharmacist feel extremely stressed, and every breath seemed to be bearing great risks. However, Su Tong didn't even look at him. This silent trial made the pharmacist begin to collapse inside, and soon large beads of sweat began to roll down his forehead. Zi. Until the sound of the sliding match was heard, the pharmacist finally couldn't bear the torture and took the initiative to say, "Master asked me to poison him. I didn't want to harm him. If I didn't poison him, Qinju wouldn't have come out at that time. Master, this is my fault. His old man knows it." Hearing this, Su Tong glanced sideways at the pharmacist. Just one glance made the pharmacist feel the huge pressure on his shoulders getting heavier and heavier. "If you didn't poison me, how would the master know about your relationship with Qinju? Why do you want to say that this is what you confessed on your own initiative?" This. The pharmacist actually really wanted to say this in his heart. But he didn't dare to say that now. The pharmacist knew very well who the guy in front of him was, and lying in front of him was not a wise choice. Seeing the pharmacist stammering and unable to speak, Su Tong continued, "Eat my food and get the benefits from both sides. Where in the world can such a good thing come from?" The pharmacist wanted to say that he could make up for it, but then he thought about it and thought of the figures in Su Tong's warehouse that he didn't even dare to think about. He suddenly realized that he couldn't seem to get enough to make up for Su Tong. Just when the pharmacist was feeling anxious, Su Tong suddenly changed his voice. "Okay, you don't have to be so nervous. Since you can join the team, it means that I don't want to kill you. Besides, this is an alliance confrontation and we are teammates. Killing you will not do me any good." Hearing Su Tong's words, the pharmacist immediately relaxed a lot, but he still did not dare to be careless. "Of course, if I pull you in, you'd better put all your little thoughts away. If you can show your role this time, the accounts between us will be settled. Brother Zhao, don't worry, I will go all out this time and I will never let my guard down again." The pharmacist didn't know in his heart whether Su Tong's words were true or false, but he still had to guarantee it with confidence. Seeing this, Su Tong nodded, stepped forward and patted the pharmacist's arm. "Relax, I don't blame you for Master's matter. Even if you hadn't poisoned him, Master would have thought of other ways to lure Qian. If you use your hands, it will be even more troublesome." Seeing Su Tong's sincere words, the pharmacist felt a lot better. "Go and complete the identity mission first. Once the identity mission is completed, it will be convenient for us to contact you." After saying that, he called Abin and pointed to the pharmacist, "This is my cousin, please help me arrange a job for him." After Aubin glanced at the pharmacist with some surprise, he nodded and took the pharmacist out. "Boss, do you really trust him?" Gu Zibai didn't know what was going on, but he was standing aside and listening to the two people talking, and he had a rough guess in his mind. He turned his head and looked at Su Tong. "Why do I think this guy is unreliable?" "It's okay to be unreliable. If you are an individual traveler at this stage, you either have extraordinary abilities or you have the ability to play both sides. Either way, this guy is not a good person." Su Tong held the cigarette pot and took 2 puffs leisurely. "Then you still, oh, that's fine, right under your nose, you're not afraid of this guy causing any trouble." Gu Zibai guessed part of Su Tong's meaning. "When you bring people into the team, you won't be afraid of them running away. Want to leave the team?" Su Tong opened so many permissions for him, and even pulled him into the core members. If he wanted to withdraw from the team, the application fee alone was enough to make this guy drink a pot. Holding a person in the palm of your hand, are you afraid that you won't have a chance to deal with him? Protect him well. This guy is our trump card. At the critical moment, he might be able to play a big role." Su Tong sat on the sofa with his head raised, thinking about how to maximize the benefits of the pharmacist. The pharmacist, who had just walked out of the door, suddenly shuddered for no reason, looked back behind him, and secretly thought in his heart, "Unlucky, why did it fall into his hands again?" But then I thought about it, this time it was an alliance battle, and we were on the same team. Even if the opponent wanted to attack me, it would not be that easy. Thinking of this, the pharmacist couldn't help but feel a lot more at ease, and sneered in his heart, "You just want to use this method to trap me. Huh, you have a good plan, and I also have a ladder to cross the bridge. Let's see." The pharmacist, who had made up his mind, followed Aubin steadily and swaying forward, as if his whole body had relaxed. Early the next morning, Cai Fu, the shopkeeper of Xixingtang, came. Su Tong handed the dragon head to shopkeeper Cai for a look. Shopkeeper Cai immediately relaxed. While thanking him repeatedly, he also talked about the origin of the dragon head. It turns out that this dragon head was the result of Dong Qiumin, the owner of Xixingtang, who learned that when a group of foreigners were transporting a batch of goods abroad, someone inadvertently discovered what seemed to be an antique vase in the cargo box. Dong Qiumin knew that these foreigners liked to rob Chinese treasures and return home, so he quietly asked someone to open the box. As soon as he opened the box, he discovered that the dragon head was here. Dong Qiumin also had capable people around him who saw how valuable this thing was, so Dong Qiumin also took great risks and took the thing back forcefully. "It's just that this thing is no longer safe in Shanghai, so I sent it to the new territories. I plan to return this thing to the country when the country is in peace. Boss Dong understands the righteousness, serves the country and the people, and is a hero in this world." Su Tong started to praise him carelessly, which made Cai Fu's face shine a lot. At this time, Su Tong also received a reminder from the prop book, which was a reminder about the completion of the Alliance mission. Alliance Mission 1, Escort the National Treasure, completed. All members received 400 points. 400 points is not a small amount, and it is points for all members, which means that even those who have not completed the certification task can get these points. In addition to the 300 points he gained from killing Sakata, he is now firmly ranked first in the standings. Su Tong took a look at the standings and found that there were already several more titles on the standings. For example, Gu Zibai gave himself the title of martial artist. This title is not his, who else could it be? There is also the pharmacist, who is more straightforward. He uses the 2 titles of pharmacist for fear that others will not know who he is. Now there is no news about Gao Zhou and Chang Wugu, but Su Tong is not anxious at all. After all, the strength of the 2 is there. It is probably that the identity task is relatively cumbersome, and it is okay to not complete it for a while. Understand? Cai Fu also stood up and said goodbye, but he did not take away the treasures. Instead, he entrusted the treasures to Su Tong for care. According to Cai Fu, since Su Tong can give him the things intact, it means that Su Tong is an upright gentleman, and it is safer to put these things with him than in Xixingtang. Regarding this small request, Su Tong accepted it without hesitation. After all, this thing was extraordinary, and he planned to show it to the master and the others. Shortly after sending Cai Fu away, a Ben also rushed back, approached Su Tong and said, "Grandpa, what you told me has been completed." Su Tong raised his brows slightly. He didn't expect that a Ben was quite efficient. He couldn't help but look at this fat man with admiration. Give the brothers a sum of money and let them have a good rest. From now on, you can take care of the Yuxing gang's affairs yourself. Su Tong knew that the business of the Yuxing gang was nothing more than cigarette stalls, food stalls, selling fish eggs, collecting rent, etc. But he was not interested in intervening in these matters, and let a Ben manage it on his own. As long as it was not too much, he could just turn a blind eye. There was no need to drag himself into the stinky ditch to mess with it. "Grandpa, don't worry, I will do a good job." When a Ben heard this, he was already very happy. This meant completely delegating power to himself. From now on, he would be the emperor of the new territories, inferior to one person and superior to 10,000 people. After giving instructions to a Ben, Su Tong returned to the room. After releasing Fa Cai and Ji Xiang to guard the door, he hugged the box containing the national treasure and escaped between reality and reality. I don't know how Master and Master are doing during this time. Can Master pass this test? Looking at the slowly opening door, Su Tong couldn't help but murmur in his heart, but soon, Su Tong realized that he had thought too much. It turned out that the Master's wife's methods were more powerful than he thought. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 837. Master, Master, I'm back. Su Tong pushed the door open and walked in as if he was home. He shouted before he entered. It felt like the person he was calling was not Master or Master, but more like a father or mother. Before entering the courtyard, he saw the old Taoist sitting on the steps and didn't know what he was doing. Su Tong walked over and said, "What are you doing squatting here? Just watch the door. What else can I do? I haven't left yet. If I stay here for a day, I still have work to do." The old man rolled his eyes, pointed at the door, and complained bitterly, before I became a regular employee, we could still work shifts. Now that you have made her a regular employee, it has become my job. Regularization. Su Tong was startled, and then he realized who the old man was talking about. He suddenly felt embarrassed and said, "I was just joking, do you guys take it seriously?" The situation at that time was really just a joke, and Su Tong really didn't think about it seriously. It's not that the eldest princess is bad, it's just that when I'm with this bitch, I always feel like she will open her mouth and bite him at any time. Go, sooner or later, you are still ashamed. The old Taoist curled his lips, took Su Tong's arm and whispered, "You little brat, don't think she is still enlightened now, if your master hadn't held her captive. Man, she has already achieved Taoism by now, and her cultivation level may be higher than yours." Su Tong does not deny this. The eldest princess reversed life and death and jumped out of the 5 elements long ago. She is neither human nor ghost, nor god, nor immortal. With her own accumulation, once the master lets go of the rope that restrains her, this girl's strength will definitely advance faster than sitting on it. The plane is faster. So I advise you to do things early and strike while the iron is hot. Don't wait until everyone has left before you start thinking about it. The daylilies are already cold. The old man lowered his voice and said. Su Tong rolled his eyes and complained, "If you don't become a Yu Lao, it's really a big loss to the matchmaking world. Seeing that the old man wanted to continue talking, Su Tong quickly interrupted and asked, "Hey, how is my wife's side? Is my master okay?" When mentioning this matter, the old Taoist grinned, showing his big yellow teeth. "Hey, I think your master is enjoying himself a lot during this time. Maybe I'd like to thank you too." Seeing the evil smile on the old Taoist's face, Su Tong didn't quite believe it. He raised his head and looked in the door. After making sure that everything was peaceful inside, he stood up, cleared his throat, and walked in the door with the box in his arms. "Master, master, I'm back." When Su Tong walked in, he saw his master sitting there holding a book in the pavilion. When he heard Su Tong's shout, his face darkened, he threw the book on the table and said angrily, "Come back when you come back. What are you shouting for? I have to pick you up as a teacher." When Su Tong heard the master's tone, his heart skipped a beat, but he leaned forward with a playful smile on his face. "Don't you dare," I shouted twice, "because I'm afraid that you, master, will miss me." Hearing this, Mr. Song laughed angrily and brought the teacup. "Are you afraid that I will miss you? I really don't dare to miss you, you little brat." Pushing your master into the fire pit without saying a word, "You master asked me to copy it 300 times, but you still have the nerve to say that I am concerned." Thinking of this incident, Mr. Song was so angry that he trembled. The most annoying thing is that this kid got into trouble and walked away faster than anyone else. When he wanted to turn around and call Su Tong to settle the score, this kid was gone. With such a filial apprentice, Mr. Song was so angry that he couldn't rest well for several days. "What's wrong, you mean, you blame me?" This was not what Su Tong said. The master was standing at the door at some point, looking over with squinted eyes. Seeing master, Mr. Song immediately became frightened. Su Tong immediately came to the master's side and held his hand. "Old man, you are my savior. If you don't come again, my master will punish me again." Shuigui gave Su Tong a slap on the head angrily. "I'll punish you. Even beating you is light." Although he was reprimanding, there was unavoidable love in his eyes. After all, although he was nominally Mr. Song's apprentice, this skill was passed down from his hands. Yes, master should punish me and beat me, but I can't be entirely blamed for this." The master snorted coldly, nodded, raised his hand and poked Mr. Song in the head. "It's not you who caused the trouble." Faced with Shuigui's scolding, Mr. Song could only pouted and held his chin with helplessness. "Hey, you came back at the right time. Please try the dumplings I just cooked." As soon as the master sat down, he saw the master's wife sticking her head out from behind the moon door, smiling at Su Tong, and walking out with a large plate of dumplings. Master's wife, you're too polite." Su Tong looked at the hot dumplings and hurriedly stood up to pick them up. As a result, the master's wife immediately dodged them. "Oh, don't touch them. Men can just sit on the table and wait for dinner. Don't touch this woman's work hand," the master's wife said and put the dumplings on the table with a smile. When Su Tong heard this, he called it nonsense and thought, "Then when I was at master's house, I didn't see you serving me dumplings. It seems that when I was with Mr. Song, I cooked every day by myself. These old ladies were so good at pretending. Old man, I know you like spicy food, so I specially prepared this dipping sauce for you." In addition to the dumplings, the master's wife also thoughtfully prepared the dipping sauce for the master, and the vinegar dishes for Su Tong and Song Lao were also prepared by the master's wife. What about the eldest princess and the goddess? Su Tong looked around and didn't see the eldest princess or the goddess of heaven, so he asked casually. "Oh, they are still making dumplings. You eat first. You don't have to wait. There is another pot of dumplings, so why don't you hurry up and eat them?" Well, no wonder the old Taoist was so unhappy because his position as chef was occupied by his wife. But I have to say that the dumplings are quite delicious, and Su Tong was not polite. Seeing master and master moving their chopsticks, he followed suit and took a few bites. Master, this. Su Tong took 2 bites, looked at the expressions of the master, and basically confirmed that the master's wife was probably going to stay here for a long time. In fact, I couldn't say that I was good or bad about this mistress. Then I thought about it, the princess and the old man were about to leave, and there were only 3 old men in this courtyard, and they looked lifeless. Having such a cheap master's wife to take care of her, working as a cook during the day and warming the master's bed and quilt at night, is no more cost-effective than hiring a nanny. The only thing I'm worried about is that the master won't be able to get through it. Huh, let's live together, don't worry about it, the master grinned, but he was open-minded. Before the dumplings were finished here, the mistress had already brought another plate of dumplings, and Su Tong could only stuff them into his mouth with ease. While eating dumplings, I talked about the situation in the script world this time. Then he opened the box and placed the dragon head on the table. New territory, dragon head. The master looked at the dragon head on the table and frowned for a moment. Su Tong saw that the master looked wrong and quickly put down his chopsticks. Be careful. If you meet a guy named Mansai Musashi Gen, you have to be careful. Eh? Why, it's the age of Dharma, can you still be stronger than me? Su Tong was a little surprised. Since the master could name him, it meant that the other party was definitely not a player. However, in the age of the end of the Dharma, Su Tong did not believe that in this era where great masters were rare, there could be people stronger than his own land gods. Who told you that he was from the age of ending law? This guy is an old monster who has lived for at least 200 years. Ah! Su Tong was shocked. He really didn't expect that there was such a person. When the master said this, there was a bit of anger in his eyes. This old monster, Mansai Musashi Gen, was still alive when I died. He was proficient in health-preserving techniques, and was good at proud warfare. He used girls to collect yin and replenish yang for the furnace tripod. I had heard of this person before, but I have never met him. If it is as you said, then there is no chance that this person will have any dealings with you. Su Tong heard the master's analysis and felt that what the master said was reasonable. They now have a great advantage, but in principle of fairness during the script, they will definitely compensate the other party. Maybe he will meet this Mansai Musashi Gen. Although you are a master of killing, you may not be able to take advantage of this old monster. Your basic skills are too poor. The master opened his mouth to point out Su Tong's key points. Although he killed the land gods, he completed a journey that might take others several lifetimes in a very short time. Therefore, if you have a weak foundation and lack of practical experience, if you encounter someone who is better than you, it will be a one-sided defeat. But if you meet someone who is stronger than you, or even someone with similar strength to yourself, you will inevitably suffer a big loss. When Su Tong heard this, he suddenly fell silent. After a moment, he asked, "Master, is there nothing we can do?" "Humph, the shortcut is not that easy, but I don't recommend that you spend time to solidify the foundation. Instead of wasting this energy, it is better to move forward and reopen the world. Master's courage and courage are always beyond ordinary people." Su Tong was also shocked by Zheng Daishan's words. It is impossible for anyone who is not truly courageous to have such insight. Thinking of this, Su Tong suddenly had a moment of enlightenment. At this point, Shuigui suddenly raised his eyebrows slightly. "Although I don't think you can beat Mansai Musashi Gen, but having said that, if you find a chance to kill this old guy, it may not be difficult." As Shuigui spoke, he glanced sideways in the direction of the kitchen. When Su Tong saw this, he immediately understood what the master meant. But Su Tong was a little embarrassed. But is this convenient? After all, this cheap master's wife is not a princess or a seasoned master. She had her soul taken away by her master and had to obey orders. If she doesn't want to take action, master can't force her to work. Isn't it convenient? This is not simple. I saw the smile on master's face getting thicker. He reached out and patted Mr. Song, who didn't understand what he meant. He picked up an orange from the table and handed it to Mr. Song. He said sincerely, "Disciple, sometimes it is necessary to sacrifice for the sake of the overall situation of." Mr. Song, Sigma, Infinite Script Killing Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 838. On fire. During the night, a scream broke the silence. The raging fire suddenly lit up the night sky, the alarm bells sounded, and the fire trucks quickly rushed over. This kind of fire truck looks more like a kind of truck. The whole body is nearly 2 meters long and more than 1 meter high. It travels on 4 iron hoop wooden wheels. An iron bucket that can hold about 2 tons of water is installed on the chassis. There is a seesaw-like pressure arm on the central pressure device of the bucket. When 3 or 4 people press it together, the water in the bucket will be sprayed out. This is the oldest firefighting device, but in this era, it is a very advanced product. The water jets sprayed out by 3 or 4 fire trucks quickly suppress the fire. But this is only the surface. There is still a lot of smoke and a lot of flames burning inside. It's over, it's over. A Japanese businessman knelt on the ground, looking at the raging fire, his heart almost bleeding. The warehouse was filled with raw silk. There are not many industries that Japan can export, and raw silk is one of them. The goods in this warehouse are very expensive, and if the fire breaks out, they will be completely destroyed. And the fire was not limited to this Japanese warehouse. At the same time, all the Japanese shops in Tsim were ignited by fire. The fire was raging. For these Japanese-style wooden buildings, it was almost as terrifying as annihilation. These despicable Chinese people. Inu Murase looked at the fire in front of him and his gums itched with hatred. Anyone could tell that someone set the fire deliberately. It must be the other players, these bastards. There were several Japanese players standing next to Inu Murase. They were all going crazy with anger as they looked at the sea of fire burning in front of them. "Kill back, I want to let these Chinese people know what the price is." Someone on the spot couldn't help it, and shouted loudly that they wanted to kill back for revenge. "I want to go to you. I don't want to die." The cold snorts from behind the crowd interrupted these hot-headed people who were ready to take revenge. Looking back, I saw Sakuragi Sime walking out. Everyone recognized him and knew that Sakuragi Sime's team was one of the subordinate teams of the Onmyo Shrine. He seemed to be the strongest here. Seeing him speak, everyone could only temporarily extinguish their anger. Seeing that everyone had calmed down, Sakuragi Haruaki continued, "In this script, we have the home field advantage. It won't be long before the Empire will fully attack. Once we occupy the new territory, we will win." As soon as these words came out, everyone nodded secretly. In this script world with this historical background, whoever has the home field advantage will take the lead. It is an unavoidable fact that Japan will go to war, and their task is to occupy as many favorable resources as possible before the war begins. As long as the battle begins and the new territory is successfully captured, there will be no suspense at all in this team battle. "Mr. Qingming, are we too passive? Please allow me to kill these bastards in the next mission," a Japanese player said. "No need to worry, there will be movement in Yin Yang Palace soon. Believe me, victory in this battle will eventually belong to us." Sakuragi Sime himself studied under Onmyo Shrine and was very aware of this historical event. He concluded that the legendary old man would leave for Onmyo Shrine soon. At that time, it will be time for them to fully launch a counterattack. Before that, they must avoid conflicts with those Eastern players as much as possible. Especially that person, Sakuragi Haruaki thought of the ugly man on the sea before, and the wound under his ribs began to hurt slightly. On the other side, Su Tong has returned from the gap between reality and reality. In addition to the dragon head that he brought between reality and reality before, Su Tong also brought back another thing. Abin. Su Tong walked out of the room and shouted toward the door. Soon, Abin rushed back from the door. Grandpa, what's the matter? From today onwards, all the brothers who enter the hall will worship Duke Long. You go find a mason and make a golden body for Grandpa Long. All the brothers who enter the hall must worship him. Abin looked at the faucet on the table and was a little confused about the situation, but according to Grandpa's words, as long as he didn't have to wash his hands and become a good person, everything else was easy to discuss. Immediately, people were sent to find masons to work. It's easy to find a mason, because you don't need to carve the faucet, you just need to shape a gold body. This doesn't require a master mason, ordinary masons can do it. After the golden body was finished, Su Tong placed the dragon head on it, picked up the cinnabar pen, and tapped lightly on the longan. Suddenly, everyone could even vaguely hear the roar of a dragon. The sound was not heard, but resounded from deep within. Even these gangsters who only knew how to deceive and oppress the people felt a sense of righteousness in their hearts. Of course, this righteousness cannot suppress their evil thoughts, nor can it transform them into messengers of justice. But that's enough. According to the master's analysis, there is a high probability that Gen Mansai Musashi will appear in the new territories. To deal with this old monster, you can't use brute force, of course you have to outsmart him. How to outwit it? This requires sacrificing his master. Oh, master, please put on your pants quickly. You don't need to sacrifice your beauty. After all, you are an old man, and your body and bones can't stand it. The master's meaning is very simple. As long as he participates in the world of the script, he is not afraid that the master's wife can still watch from the sidelines at the critical moment. What's that famous saying, I don't want to see my master being beaten to death, right? How to participate? It's very simple, interest bundling. The master's calculation is very simple. The new territories is an untapped market now. Worshipping Guangong is not popular at the moment. People from all over the world come here and bring a mess. In this case, it is simple. It is a very good idea to establish a spiritual belief for them and worship the Dragon King. When the master said this, Su Tong understood that this was to replicate the case of the master acting as the city god in the previous script world. Then why not worship the city god directly? On the one hand, the character of the city god is too positive and he is a land god, which is not suitable for development in the new territories, a place where good and bad people are mixed. On the other hand, the reason for worshipping the Dragon King is also because the new territories started on docks, and poor people really couldn't make it. If they built a boat to go fishing, they would not starve to death. Furthermore, the Dragon Prince is highly recognizable. Whether it is those who are involved in the world or ordinary people, they always have to pay homage to him when they go to sea or ashore. The most important point is that the dragon head in Su Tong's hand will definitely attract the attention of Mansai Musashigen. After all, it contains dragon energy and is more useful than directly collecting spiritual stones. It's not impossible for Su Tong to hide this thing directly, but it would be unlucky to do so. In this case, it would be better to erect this dragon head openly. At least before the full-scale war breaks out in Japan, Mansai Musashigen may not dare to be so blatant if he wants to seize the dragon head. Of course, if he really takes away the dragon head, it will not be Su Tong's business. Su Tong lit the dragon's eyes, and then took out a magic talisman from the box. I saw the words "Follow the order of the Ghost Holy Emperor of the South of Yinko" written sparsely on the talisman in a ghostly talisman-like writing. There are 3 other words written behind the talisman, Song King Yun. This is Mr. Song's real name. Different from the last Bian talisman, This time the talisman was issued by the master in the name of Du Ziren. There was a small mark stamped underneath, which was a mark unique to Du Ziren. The reason why the master is able to pull off the tiger's skin like this is because after the last trip to Yushan, Du Ziren promoted the master to a godly position, from the original inspector of the underworld to the one of the front car and the seal. Although he is a small official, his official position is already it's even with Yin Kaisi. If you don't believe it, just because of Du Ziren's face, the Dragon King would not let him get this position. Su Tong put the magic talisman on it, glanced at it, and sure enough, he saw a brilliant golden glow pouring out of the Dragon King. At this time, even Abin and others were stunned. Although they could not see Jin Xia, they could feel that the Dragon Prince in front of them seemed a little unusual. Even those who licked the blood from the knife edge had the urge to kneel on the ground and worship. The reason for this is precisely the blessing effect of the master's secret use of incense merit. With just a little bit of incense merit, the effect is enough to shock people. Su Tong left it to Abin to do the promotion. He must be allowed to promote Dragon Prince. This stumped Abin. He was good at beating and killing him, but promoting the Dragon King was a bit difficult for him. Su Tong didn't care about this and only gave Abin a deadline of about 10 days. Of course, he would also secretly ask Yu Jixiang to help, create a little chaos, and let the Dragon King come to calm things down. Anyway, I don't need to specifically give instructions for this set of operations. The master and the others have already understood it. After doing these things, Su Tong received an invitation from Bishop Simpson to attend a banquet. After the invitation was sent, a prompt for a side mission came to Su Tong's ears. Side Mission 1, Rose Restaurant. Mission description: Rose Restaurant is a very interesting place, and today will also be a special day. Finding the secret of Rose Restaurant will be of great help to you. The mission is successful, a single player obtains 400 alliance points. Mission failed, 200 alliance points will be deducted. Looking at the task reminder sent from the prop book, Su Tong looked at the invitation letter in his hand and couldn't help but secretly wonder whether this task asked him to investigate a restaurant or to investigate Simpson. Although he didn't know why this foreign monk suddenly found him, Su Tong had someone prepare a car and drove to Garden Road to attend Simpson's invitation. Regardless of whether it is due to mission requirements or not, at this stage, foreigners are their major advantage, and Su Tong will never let go of this advantage easily. Because it was a one-man mission, Su Tong didn't need to take Gu Zibai with him. He was left to look after the house honestly, so that if he encountered the enemy's revenge, he wouldn't be blamed by the enemy. Garden Road is located in the Central and Western District, which is also the so-called Foreigner District. Su Tong's car was driving on the street, and he could see foreigners of both sexes shopping on the street. Occasionally, you can see foreign soldiers patrolling with guns. The bustling streets are lined with all kinds of neon lights, which really makes people feel like they have returned to reality for a moment. After the car passed through the busy streets, it came to the door of a restaurant. A black doorman stepped forward and opened the car door. He was stunned for a moment and subconsciously wanted to reach out to stop Su Tong from moving forward. This is a foreigner area, and it is often very unfriendly to these yellow-skinned Asians, and the same is true for Rose Hotel. But Su Tong didn't say anything and slapped the invitation letter directly on this guy's face. When the doorman saw the invitation and looked up at the tall man with the sinewy face in front of him, he took 2 steps back in fear. Su Tong snatched the invitation, casually dropped a silver dollar tip on the ground, and strode inside. As soon as he entered the door, it was obvious that many people were looking towards Su Tong. In the hotel lobby, everyone was wearing gentleman suits and luxurious dresses. Su Tong was wearing a simple robe and coat, especially the braids on his head, which were particularly eye-catching. Some people even wanted to come forward and drive Su Tong away. Fortunately, Simpson had already anticipated the situation and entrusted Colonel Simon to wait at the door early. When he saw Su Tong, he hurriedly walked to Su Tong. Introduced to everyone enthusiastically. When they heard that the yellow-skinned Asian in front of them turned out to be the honorary cardinal of the church, those who were uncomfortable with Su Tong's appearance immediately put on flattering smiles. The authority of the church cannot be questioned by anyone. Even today's queen can only impose some restrictions on the church's funds, but she does not dare to really touch the church's bottom line. Praise the Lord God, your arrival has made this place shine. Simpson put on his black monastic robe, carried a cross, and came to Su Tong with a Bible in his hand. He solemnly kissed Su Tong's ring face in front of everyone, and further confirmed Su Tong's identity to everyone. Identity. Now no one dared to question Su Tong, and all bowed to Su Tong to say hello. Even under the aura of the church, some people felt that this rough-faced guy looked particularly manly. Well, it's just so realistic. Simpson led Su Tong up to a separate room on the second floor. After Su Tong sat down, Simpson said, I have already sent a telegram to the church regarding your appearance. The church means that I hope you can leave as soon as possible. Heading to the Vatican. When Su Tong heard this, he immediately frowned. It's like this every time. Is your church short of people? After experiencing the script with a Western background, Su Tong knew exactly what Simpson was going to say next, so he said first, I'm sorry, please apologize to the Pope on my behalf. I can't go back for the time being. What? Simpson was startled. He didn't expect Su Tong to refuse so simply. Just when he wanted to say something more, Su Tong's expression was particularly upright and he continued, this mysterious Eastern country needs to spread the glory of the God Lord now. Although I know that this is a very difficult choice, but I am still willing to dedicate my life here. Simpson was shocked. In his opinion, coming to the East to preach is a very bad decision. The indigenous people here have long established thinking, and they have deep-seated beliefs in the so-called local gods. Even if there is no need to deliberately preach, the new generation of children will instinctively believe in a God called God, and will not believe in the glory of the Lord. Su Tong's words all revealed a spirit of selfless dedication. This spirit moved Simpson and made his face feel hot. But Simpson didn't know that the subtle expression on his face had long been seen by Su Tong. Seeing this, Su Tong stretched out his palm and applied it lightly on Simpson's greasy bald head. Child, our lives are as humble as fireflies. Only when we sense the call of the Lord God will we shine with dazzling light. Maybe the two of us are inconspicuous, but the moment our millions of faiths gather together, God and the Lord are by our side. Such shocking words shocked Simpson mentally, and he instantly felt extremely guilty for his previous thoughts. But he still said hesitantly, but the people here don't welcome us very much. When I tried to tell him that the Lord of God is the only true God, an old man actually said that they have more than 3,000 gods. My Lord of God. How did he memorize the names of so many gods? Faced with Simpson's complaint, Su Tong just smiled. Child, this is the mysterious East. Their civilization is even older than the church. If you reject their gods, you are rejecting them. If you want to preach, you must first understand them and join them, even a little bit. Be them. Simpson was very confused by these words and did not understand them, but this did not affect Su Tong's status in his heart, and his eyes even showed more admiration. This is the messenger of the Lord of God. His thoughts and wisdom far exceed those of his poor muggle head. So what should I do? Simpson asked, eyes wide. It's very simple. If you can't beat it, just join and try to gain popularity. Su Tong said with a smile on his face, but he had his own little plan in mind. If he wanted to join, he must learn to admit it. As long as Simpson recognized the Dragon King would have official endorsement in the new territories, and it wouldn't be the same for whoever takes advantage of whom. Simpson was still hesitating for a moment, always feeling that the messenger's words were too profound. You see, I have now joined and become one of them, and they have quickly accepted me. When the time is right, I will call on them to surrender to the embrace of the God Lord. This. Simpson's mind was spinning. Seeing that the bald man was still hesitating, Su Tong could only use his trump card and said to Simpson solemnly, "Remember, there are many ways to believe, even if it does not have any fixed form. As long as he has a yearning in his heart, he can bathe under the glory of the Lord God." The last sentence of this sentence, the original saying is, if you have a yearning in your heart, you can pursue your faith. This was what the old magician used to fool Su Tong. Now it was slightly modified by Su Tong and used to fool Simpson. Simpson's head was obviously shocked by these words, and his brain buzzed, as if he suddenly had an enlightenment. Generally, he knelt down in front of Su Tong devoutly and said, "Hallelujah! Hallelujah!" After a while, Simpson walked out of the box, his eyes full of tears of excitement, holding the cross in his hands, and already having infinite yearning for heaven in his mind. He even completely forgot his original purpose of persuading Su Tong to leave the new territories. After sending Simpson off, Su Tong stood up and walked out of the box, glanced left and right at the corridor, and began to think about this side mission. According to the description of the side mission, this hotel seems to be hiding some ulterior secrets. And only tonight will the clues be revealed. But where are the clues? The boss asked me to bring the things to the room. At this time, Su Tong's ears moved slightly and he heard a voice coming from the corridor, which seemed to be a hotel waiter. These people seemed to be carrying something heavy and walked into the room step by step. "Boss." Hearing these two words, Su Tong was moved. Who else knows his restaurant better than the boss? Thinking of this, Su Tong turned around and walked up the steps to the third floor, following several waiters in a hurry. His steps were very light, and his body was almost close to one of the waiters. But strangely, the four waiters he was completely unaware of Su Tong's appearance. After opening the door to the corridor, several people put down the boxes and then turned around and left obediently. Only after the door was closed, Su Tong walked out from behind the screen and looked around. He didn't find anything strange. He just felt that the decoration here was very old-fashioned and was incompatible with the brightly lit Western style outside. More like an old man's room. There was also an exquisite shrine on the bedside of the room. Su Tong stepped forward and took a closer look. There was a line of small words written on the token: "No life, no fruit, the seed of the immortal God." Who is this? Never heard of such a god. I dare not say that I know all the Taoist gods, but at least I have an impression of them. After all, I had to participate in Luo Tianda dipping. But I have never heard of the existence of such a god. Since he's not on the list, could he be the evil god? Just when Su Tong was feeling doubtful, a few crisp sounds suddenly came from the box next to him. Su Tong's eyes flashed with golden light and he looked around, and sure enough he saw a blonde foreigner in the box. Now he felt even weirder, walked to the box and opened it. Woo 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 woo. The foreigner in the box immediately struggled when he saw Su Tong. This foreigner was not very old, but he was quite handsome. He had blue eyes, a sullen nose, sharp outlines, and short blonde hair. In reality, he must have crushed Xiao Xian. The meaty kind. Su Tong ignored the guy's look for help, but saw another thing, a document bag. Taking out the document bag, Su Tong took a closer look after opening it and found that the document bag was full of asset transfers. Is it a robbery? Su Tong took a closer look, and his expression gradually became weird. He looked at the young man, looked up and down, left and right, and found that there were more than a dozen large yellow croakers placed under the box, so he asked, "Your name is Frank Richard?" The young man nodded wildly. "That's strange, why do all the properties above have to be transferred to your name?" Su Tong looked at the information on the documents. Rose Hotel, 2 multinational commercial banks, 2 pawn shops, and even a ferry. Such a huge windfall was all going to be transferred to this foreign young man? If robbery was such a good thing, Su Tong would also like to try it. With doubts in mind, Su Tong suddenly thought of a way. He stretched out his hand to take Mr. Richard out of the box, then threw him under the bed, put on Jack's mask and turned into Charlie, and then lay down go into the box. Sorry, I got stuck today. I deleted it twice before I could finish it. It was a bit slow, so I'm sorry. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 839. The box is stuffy and the space is very small. For Du Nanan's body type, it would definitely not be comfortable to lie curled up inside. Fortunately, he threw all the gold bars covered below into the team warehouse, and the space was still more generous than that of Mr. Charlie. In his spare time, Su Tong never forgot to look through the documents in his folder. The dim sight did not affect Su Tong's vision. He had been looking too hastily just now. Now after he carefully read every line, he discovered that the owner of Rose Hotel, whose surname was Fang, was Xiao Hua. Behind the information, there are some sales contracts, which probably mean that all the transferred properties must be sold off. There is no exception in the contract, and the signature column is blank. It is obvious that after Mr. Charlie takes over these industries, he only needs to sign his name and get it to the exchange to exchange for at least 80,000 taels of silver. This money can definitely be regarded as a windfall in this era. When he turned to the last 2 pages, Su Tong unexpectedly saw a ship ticket sandwiched in the contract. The destination turned out to be the United States. Interestingly, a Chinese tycoon actually wanted to leave all his wealth to a foreigner, and asked him to take all his assets to leave the new territories and go to that distant place in the United States. Is this the legendary super gift package? But what Su Tong didn't understand was that for such a good thing, Mr. Charlie should be overjoyed and just hold Mr. Fang's thigh and call him daddy. Why should he be tied up and locked in a coffin? Su Tong couldn't think of any reason to refuse the super gift package in the current era. Unless Su Tong suddenly remembered that the last time he played the role of the master of the Ma family, the prop book had warned that in this era there was still a risk of seizing the body. The world of this script is very close to that script. Could it be that? Seize the house? This answer appeared in Su Tong's mind, and all problems were instantly explained. Yes, if it were you, you would have to complete the handover and transition of all your property before taking the body, to ensure that after taking the new body, you can still carry a lot of wealth and find a place where no one knows you. Restart. The person whose body has been taken away will definitely not be happy. No matter how much money is given to him, he will lose his life. Who would agree to it? So this lucky and unlucky Mr. Charlie was thrown into this big box. This is a perfect inference. Just when Su Tong thought he had deduced the answer, he heard footsteps on the stairs outside the door. It seems that the real owner has arrived. Thinking of this, Su Tong tried his best to see what kind of method Mr. Ma used to seize the body. Buzz, caca. The door was pushed open, and then the sound of locking was heard. Following the footsteps, he walked to the box. Bang bang, there was a sound of gently tapping the box. Then he heard a deep sigh coming from outside the box. In the 36th year of Emperor Kangxi's reign, Emperor Kangxi conquered Galdan 3 times in that year. I stood on the street and watched from a distance, and I found that the emperor's luck was too strong. Kong Huang? Su Tong was shocked. He had seen Emperor Kong? How many times has this guy taken away his body? If calculated, this guy is probably as old as the old monster from the Japanese country mentioned by the master. Thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help but be a little surprised. He originally thought that it was the age of the end of law, and his strength must be unruly here, but now it seems that this era is not as simple as he thought. Just listen to the voice outside the box and continue. I followed the destiny and took away a prince of the 8 banners, and soon accumulated a fortune. I wanted to use the prince's identity to become an immortal, but I was caught by Qin Tianjian. He saw the tale and almost beat me to death. Qin Tianjian was still very strong at that time. Su Tong raised his head suspiciously, opened his eyes, and saw the true face of Boss Ma through the box. This is a man in his early 40s, well-maintained, with a long beard on his delicate face. His hair has been cut into short braids and looks quite energetic. But the tone of voice when speaking always makes people feel very uncomfortable, as if the person talking to him is more like a very old man. Su Tong tried to look at the other person with his eyes, but an even stranger situation occurred. He couldn't see through him. No, it should be said that when he looked at the other person's body, he felt as if he was seeing an ordinary person. This feeling was something he had just encountered with his master's wife not long ago. What an old monster! Su Tong was a little surprised, which not only confirmed his conjecture, but also caught him off guard. However, Su Tong didn't panic. Even this old monster might not have no chance of winning. Besides, the other party didn't seem to have any intention of taking action. Let's wait and see. To see what the other party is planning. The man was like an old man sitting by the fireplace. As soon as he opened his mouth, he began to tell a long and smelly story. It was nothing more than that he was chased by Qin Tian prison and was almost beaten several times. His soul was scattered, and he finally hid in the body of an old farmer in the countryside. He accumulated a huge family fortune by seizing his own son, grandson, and the talents of the last 3 generations. Qin Tianjian's pursuit was also much less than before, especially the corruption and decline of the dynasty, which gradually made Qin Tianjian lose its former glory. He relied on this to seize possessions from generation to generation, and finally gradually established a firm foothold in the new territories. With this foreign style, he became the big boss of Uejilu. After Boss Ma finished speaking, he stood up. You can keep the contract in the box and take the gold bars with you. I have no intention of causing trouble, so please let me live. After Boss Ma finished speaking, he opened the door, turned around and walked out, not forgetting to close the door before leaving. Is this asking for peace? Su Tong didn't expect that the other party was already giving in before he took action. After thinking about it, he thought it was the same. He just wanted to seize the body to survive and he had no life or death grudge against him. There was no need to fall out with him. Thinking of this, Su Tong stood up from the box, took a look, and saw Boss Ma walking downstairs through the door. Well, people don't want to see me either, so there's no point in staying here looking down upon me. Su Tong threw the document bag in his hand on the table and prepared to go downstairs to leave. After all, he had no grudges and it was hard to do it himself. However, just when Su Tong threw away the document bag and walked out the door, he heard a buzzing cry for help from under the bed. Su Tong never thought about saving this lucky Mr. Charlie, but after taking 2 steps, he turned back and threw Charlie on the bed. Then he took off the cloth from Charlie's mouth and looked at it. Does Mr. Charlie have any last words? Dead. Dead. He is dead. However, to Su Tong's expectation, it was okay that Charlie didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, Su Tong realized that something was wrong. Who died? Tell me clearly. Boss Ma, I watched him commit suicide in front of me with my own eyes. He is a dead man. Hearing this, Su Tong suddenly had a bad thought in his heart. He couldn't move to seize the body, but since the main body was dead, why didn't the other party complete the seizure as soon as possible? Since you can find yourself, can't you find Charlie who was thrown under the bed? This is unreasonable. Su Tong pushed Charlie away and turned around to leave. But when he reached out to open the door, his chest beat rapidly for no reason. It was Linglong's heart. Linglong has 7 orifices and is born with the ability to seek good fortune and avoid evil. At this moment, Su Tong's hands suddenly jumped so quickly that he placed his hands on the door handle and froze there. I squinted my eyes and looked out through the crack in the door, and I didn't know when I saw a mirror standing outside the door. The mirror is large and faces the door. This old thief is indeed treacherous. He deliberately showed weakness to make me lower my guard. If I opened the door without any precautions, I might have fallen into the other party's trap. Thinking of this, Su Tong narrowed his eyelids and raised his hand, and a sword energy struck him. Boom! The blazing pure yang sword light penetrated the door and struck directly on the mirror. However, what surprised Su Tong was that as soon as his pure yang sword energy entered the mirror, it merged directly into the mirror and disappeared like a mud cow entering the sea. Gone. Such a strange situation even made Su Tong, a land god, start to feel a little incredible. He turned around and walked to the window. Since he couldn't go through the front door, he might as well jump out of the window. But when Su Tong walked to the window and took a look, the scene in front of him made his eyelids jump a few times. Looking around, I saw that the bustling street downstairs had disappeared and was replaced by a larger mirror. It was as if the entire restaurant was standing on mirrors. Dong Tien. Seeing this, Su Tong was shocked. The so-called cave sky, the residence of gods, was just like the yin-yang cave he entered in Gizhu. It turned one area into a boundary and opened up another cave sky. It's just that the more powerful the gods are, the more powerful the cave will be. This is not a method used by practitioners and belongs exclusively to ghosts and gods. Could it be that Boss Ma is not a practitioner but a god? Seeing this, Su Tong suddenly turned around and saw that the statue originally enshrined in the shrine had indeed disappeared. I want to go, I want to go. At this time, Charlie, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened the rope buckle under his feet and stumbled to rush out. Su Tong stretched out his hand to pull him back. He was not sure what kind of trouble it would cause if Charlie rushed out recklessly like this. Let me go, Charlie thought Su Tong was going to stop him and started to break away desperately. Seeing this, Su Tong could only raise his hand and hit the guy with a knife, knocking the guy unconscious first, and then threw him into the box. He summoned the Chunyang sword and looked around. I'll count to 3. If you don't let me go, we will compete to see whether your cave is more powerful or the sword in my hand is more powerful. The empty room was eerily quiet for a moment. Su Tong took a deep breath and began to count silently, 1. In fact, Su Tong was unsure for a moment. After all, this was the first time he encountered this strange situation. He frowned and raised the pure yang sword high above his head. 2. The blade of the sword was shining brightly, and the dazzling sword light became more and more dazzling. 3. If you don't drink the toast, you will be fined. Look at me smashing your cave. Seeing that the other party was unmoved and looked like he was going to kill him, Su Tong was really angry. He waved the pure yang sword and struck down the door in front of him. Boom! In an instant, the 10-foot-long sword light smashed the door into pieces and struck the mirror outside the door with undiminished power. You can see the moment the sword light touched the mirror, ripples like mercury rippled on the mirror, and it was smashing Su Tong's sword. The light was absorbed bit by bit, but compared to the sword strike just now, the absorption speed this time was obviously much slower. Seeing this, Su Tong slashed down with his sword again, hitting the mirror with 2 sword rays in a row. Now the mirror in front of him began to be unable to withstand it and made a sharp and ear-piercing cracking sound. When Su Tong struck with his third sword energy, the mirror in front of him exploded. The huge shockwave directly turned the building in front of him into flat ground. Su Tong couldn't help but close his eyes under the strong light. After the strong light dissipated, Su Tong opened his eyelids slightly. The world in front of him had changed. He looked at a blue sky. The world is impossibly clean. However, when Su Tong lowered his head and took a look, he realized that he was actually standing on a huge mirror. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The mirror surface rippled with ripples one after another, as if someone was walking towards him, but when he followed the sound, he found that it was completely empty and there was no one at all. Whether it was the life icon or his own divine eye, it seemed as if everything had failed at this moment. Where are you? A soft voice of inquiry passed into Su Tong's ears, as if someone was asking him. I'm here. The voice continued to come, the same voice, as if he was asking himself questions. And there are more and more conversations like this. An ordinary person would have been very confused at this time, but Su Tong was very calm. He knew that the technique of seizing a body was extraordinary, and the thing that should not be disturbed was his own mind. Once the opponent caught the opportunity, he might be captured in an instant. Devour the soul. At this time, the mirror under his feet was completely filled with his own shadow, and each shadow had a different expression. Some were crying, some were laughing, and some were staring at Su Tong coldly. A person originally had only one shadow, but his own shadow was overwhelming in front of him. For a moment, Su Tong even had the illusion that he was also a shadow among them. However, the moment this thought arose, Su Tong immediately suppressed it to death. The more it was at this time, the less panicked it was. You are yourself, no matter how many shadows there are, they are just shadows. He immediately calmed down and sat cross-legged on the mirror. His mind gradually calmed down and was not affected by external objects. At this time, thousands of shadows in front of him gradually merged into one figure, and slowly emerged from the mirror in front of him, sitting face to face with Su Tong. Regardless of their expression, temperament, and eyes, they are almost exactly the same as Su Tong. I am afraid that even if the master is invited here, there is no way to tell the difference between the two. I am you, and you are me. I was born without roots, and I am a shadow of no birth. The shadow in front of him silently recited a convoluted scripture. For a moment, Su Tong frowned slightly and found that the mirror under his body began to pull him in little by little. Su Tong tried it, but found that the more he struggled, the more he fell into the mirror. The faster. I believe that when many people see this scene, they may unconsciously think in their minds, if you are pulled into the mirror, does it mean that you will become the shadow of the other person from now on? However, the strange thing is that instead of struggling, Su Tong looked at the shadow in front of him that was exactly the same as himself with a smile, raised his eyebrows slightly, and asked, "Are you sure you are me?" The figure who looked exactly like Su Tong in front of him had a sinister smile on his face. If I am you, then you are, so there is no need to be sure. Hearing this, Su Tong simply closed his eyes, acting like you can do whatever you want, quietly waiting for his body to sink little by little. Seeing Su Tong's sudden cooperation, the shadow in front of him finally had a troubled look on his face and frowned. Said, "Aren't you worried about me?" Su Tong didn't even move his eyelids, and didn't even respond. He looked like you could do whatever you wanted, which made Shadow feel even more troublesome. Seizing a body is no child's play. Even as a god, he doesn't dare to be sure of victory every time. Su Tong's will is as firm as a rock. No matter how he tries to disturb this guy's mind, if his thoughts are enough to sneak in, as long as the other party has the slightest mood swing, he can let his will contaminate the other person's thinking. But facing Su Tong, Shadow felt that the guy in front of him was just a flawless stone, leaving no gaps for him. In just a moment, most of Su Tong's body was pulled into the mirror. But until now, the Shadow has not really completed the body seizing. If he continued to delay, the situation would begin to go against him. Shadow's heart sank, and he simply planned to throw everything over. Suddenly he stretched out his hand and pushed Su Tong into the mirror. "Since you are cooperating like this, I would rather obey your orders." As he spoke, He planned to forcibly devour Su Tong's soul, but at this moment, Shadow suddenly discovered that Su Tong's eyes had opened at some point, and even stared at him with a somewhat playful look in his eyes. "Are you sure you are really me?" Still the same question as before, Shadow said impatiently, "Of course it's you." However, as soon as he finished speaking, Su Tong smiled contemptuously, "Are you sure you are really me?" Su Tong asked again, but this time, after he finished speaking, new figures continued to split up around him. Each figure had a completely different look and appearance, including men and women, old and young. How is this going? Shadow's eyes widened. Isn't this his own ability? But upon closer inspection, he discovered that this was not his own ability. The shadow he had differentiated was just a change in his demeanor and emotion. But at this moment, each of Su Tong's differentiated shadows seemed to have its own soul, and every look and every movement had its own thoughts. I play different roles every day, and sometimes I even wonder who the role I am playing today is. A sinister smile appeared on Su Tong's lips, a filial disciple, a rebellious young master, a kind-hearted child, or an executioner doctor. Since you are me, tell me which one is the real me. Su Tong never felt that he had any mental problems, but before he came into contact with script killing, he was drawing a blueprint for life every day. In the hospital, the imitator plays different roles based on the characteristics of the patients. Even if he plays the role many times, he himself sometimes cannot tell what his original appearance is. Now, tell me, who are you? You. Shadow looked at the densely packed figures around him. Every face was exactly the same as Su Tong's, but they felt completely different. His head suddenly got bigger. He had killed so many people, but this was the first time he encountered such a strange situation. This guy is a lunatic. A crazy land god. Shadow probably never dreamed that he would meet such a top-quality person. This. The shadow stretched out his hand to grab a figure in the mirror, wanting to devour one of them first, regardless of the situation. The moment he caught this figure out, all the figures underneath him suddenly came out, stretched out their palms to grab the shadow's body, and pulled him into the mirror. Countless weird thoughts suddenly came to him crazily. In Shadow's thoughts, the shadow began to scream strangely, and more strange thoughts arose in his consciousness. Various characters began to make it difficult for him to distinguish which one was the real Su Tong. You are not me, you are just an idea derived from me, a role, an identity. Su Tong's thoughts penetrated into Shadow's mind, and in an instant, faces appeared in Shadow's mind. These faces were all objects he had taken away from him. But when he looked carefully, he found that the faces of these people gradually changed into those of Su Tong. No. No. This is not you, this is me. Seeing this, Shadow immediately panicked and screamed to be separated from Su Tong, but the moment this thought arose, Shadow suddenly realized that he had exposed a flaw. We rushed to remedy the situation, but it was too late. If you and I are divided, how can you be me? In an instant, a harsh explosion sounded, and the huge mirror exploded to pieces. Then the whole world was wrapped in a huge fireball. When the shadow raised his head, he suddenly discovered that Su Tong's figure stood in front of him, and the sky rose behind him. There is a huge furnace like the sun. Su Tong's figure stood tall on the Ruyi stove. Now that you are here, don't leave. An idea occurred to Su Tong, and in an instant the Ruyi furnace suddenly fell down, its mouth opened, and it fell upside down. Seeing the shadow, he was completely panicked. He spread his hands to reveal his true form. When he raised his head again, the face had completely changed. It was a very strange face, and the nose, eyes, ears, and even the mouth seemed to have changed from different shapes. The same ones are spliced on the cheeks. No, this is my cave, my world. It's not your turn to make the decision. His body began to grow in size, becoming like a giant reaching the sky. He wanted to push the stove away, but Su Tong had completely escaped from this guy's spell at this moment, and his mind could be truly connected with his physical body. With just one thought, the boiling blood of the flesh was injected into the Ruyi furnace of the Great Sunday. For a moment, the treasure furnace emitted brilliant firelight and hit the shadow heavily. With a muffled sound of bang, the shadow was immediately smashed to pieces and thrown into the Ruyi furnace without any suspense. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 840. Click. A piercing explosion sounded in the room. Su Tong opened his eyes and found that he was standing in front of a broken mirror at this moment. Looking at the shrine above the bed again, I found that the statue inside had turned into a pinch of black powder. I almost got into trouble with you. Su Tong let out a long breath. In fact, he felt a little guilty. He thought that Boss Ma might be a practitioner, but he didn't expect that he turned out to be a god. And as soon as he comes, he will take away his own body. Amoda said that the art of seizing a body is extraordinary, and the safest way is to severely injure the opponent's spirit, and then seize the body and forcibly devour it. But this god used a more domineering method to seize him. If your will is slightly weak in the mirror and you are confused by the other person's scriptures, you will really be possessed by the other person in an instant. It's a shame I didn't read the books in vain during this period. Su Tong secretly thought that he was lucky. Reading can cultivate his moral character. He is strong-willed and can see through the other party's flaws. On the one hand, it is thanks to his exquisite heart with 7 orifices, which can see through obstacles. On the other hand, it is also related to reading in his spare time. A certain relationship. Ding, side mission 1, Rose Hotel mission completed. The sound of the props also sounded at the right time. Su Tong sat by the bed, glanced at the unconscious Mr. Charlie next to him, picked up the kettle on the table, and poured it on Mr. Charlie's face. Ah! A shrill scream sounded. Su Tong looked at it and yelled, he took the wrong pot of water. This pot of water was hot. Fortunately, the temperature of the hot water was not too high, about 80 degrees. Mr. Charlie's face was a little red from the heat. He got up holding his face and looked at Su Tong in horror, wondering what on earth this guy was going to do. Su Tong smiled and handed the document bag to Mr. Charlie. This should have been your misfortune, but you are lucky to have met me. Charlie took the document bag with astonishment on his face, and after taking a look at the contents, he was also shocked. However, what surprised Su Tong was that when Charlie saw such a windfall, he quickly calmed down and threw the file into the fireplace. This is not what I want. I am an adventurer. This wealth has nothing to do with me. These words really surprised Su Tong. Mr. Charlie, what you just burned was 80,000 taels of silver. 80,000 taels of silver. Charlie almost bit his tongue, obviously frightened by this number. However, the guy glanced at the fireplace and firmly rejected the wealth. He walked up to Su Tong and said, please let me follow you and let me experience the magic of the East. Sure enough, there are always huge differences in people's thoughts. Charlie seemed to be possessed after discovering the mysterious power of the ancient East in Su Tong. If the roles were reversed, Su Tong would probably have taken it. The money was gone. Okay, then just follow me. It was rare for Su Tong to find an interesting person, and he didn't lack a pair of chopsticks anyway, so he simply agreed to Charlie's request, but he still declared again and again, but I won't teach you anything. Just follow you and let me learn the mysterious Eastern magic. Charlie looked quite silly and even a little paranoid, which suited Su Tong's taste. After leading Charlie out of the room, Su Tong pointed out the location of the Yuxing gang to Charlie and asked him to go back and pack his luggage. You can come to Yuxing to find him. Then he took the car back to Yuxing gang. When I returned to Yuxing gang, I found a group of people carrying something, and I pricked up my ears to listen. Dragon King, protect me, regulate my water and soil, and keep me safe. When Su Tong listened to this limerick, he couldn't help but be curious. After asking someone, he found out that he asked a bin to promote the Dragon King, and a bin went to find the white paper fan Baogong from Hongtalu last time. When the leather Bagong heard this, he wrote a limerick for him as a promotion. Su Tong listened to it and thought it was a good idea, but it was a bit off. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and went into the house. Not long after, he called Abin and gave him a piece of paper. Stop reciting that limerick. It's going to be twisted no matter how hard you listen. From now on, when you go for a run every morning, just sing this song to me on the way. Abin scratched his head and said, "Grandpa, we're not very good at singing." He took a look at the lyrics and was stunned. Even though Abin was a reckless man who only knew how to kill people and set fires, he glanced at the lyrics and was deeply shocked by this song. The lyrics are simple and generous, exuding a sense of masculinity. Just reading the lyrics once, I feel hot in my heart, and I can't help but want to shout out, "Okay. Grandpa, this song is so good." "This song, what is your name?" The name of this song is, Descendants of the Dragon. Early the next morning, when it was just dawn, people on the street heard a loud roar and singing. There is a river in the Far East, and its name is the Yangtze River. There is a river in the Far East, and its name is the Yellow River. The lyrics are simple, but they make pedestrians on the street stop and listen. What kind of song is this? An old man stood up from his chair, raised his head and looked at the Yuxing gang people running in front of them. The thick and bright voices along with the singing shocked the hearts of the people. Although I have never seen the beauty of the Yangtze River, I often wander around the Yangtze River in my dreams. Although I have never heard the strength of the Yellow River, it is surging in my dreams. There is a dragon in the ancient East, and its name is China. As soon as the song came out, some people's eyes became wet on the spot. This place in the New Territories is a mixed bag, but there are not many real locals. Most of them are vagrants who come from all over the world to escape the war. Who doesn't miss home, and who doesn't miss the Yangtze and Yellow Rivers that gave birth to them? When people heard the phrase "Descendants of the Dragon," many people couldn't stand it anymore and sang loudly along with the song regardless of whether the tune was right or not. Su Tong didn't know what kind of changes a song he copied casually would bring to the hearts of those who had left their homes in this turbulent era. At this moment, Su Tong was sitting in the quiet room, and his soul came out of his body and entered the hall. With a thought in his mind, he summoned the great Sun Ruyi furnace, only to hear bursts of unwilling roars and curses coming from the furnace. "Humph, your mouth will be tough even when you're about to die." Su Tong sneered, stretched out his hand and flicked the Ruyi furnace. Suddenly, the furnace buzzed, and a huge storm reverberated in the furnace, tearing the god in the furnace into pieces in an instant. But within a moment, these fragments quickly restored themselves, gathered together again, and transformed into a human-shaped black shadow. "I am an immortal, infinite in life, and will never die. Even you, an earthly immortal, want to kill me. What a fool's dream. I just like your tough talk." Seeing that the other party was still shouting, Su Tong knocked on the Ruyi furnace again. This time the storm he summoned was even more terrifying, mixed with flames and thunder and lightning, and it tore old immortal Wu Sheng into pieces in an instant. Just waiting for these fragments to be restored again, Su Tong suddenly reached out and grabbed a large fragment from the Ruyi furnace. Once the fragment was freed from the imprisonment of the Ruyi furnace, it turned into a black light and escaped from Su Tong's hand. This guy was able to escape several pursuits from Qin Tianjian at the peak of the Qing dynasty. It was due to this characteristic of immortality that even if there was a trace of his soul left, it would only be a matter of time before he could recover. But since Su Tong dared to catch him, how could he run away? As soon as he raised his hand, he saw a golden light flying out from his palm. The dragon beaming talisman was activated and he was immediately wrapped into a ball of rice dumplings. Su Tong pulled him back. Just wait, the cause and effect between us has not yet been settled, and I will have to settle this account with you sooner or later. The black shadow tightly wrapped by the dragon-binding talisman continued to scream. He expected that Su Tong, an earthly immortal, would completely destroy him. If he hadn't been careless and didn't expect to meet a freak like Su Tong and was disturbed by Su Tong, how could he be captured by him? It's ridiculous. You still want to have a relationship with me? I'm afraid you won't have this chance. Su Tong said and put it into the immortal furnace. When he saw only one volume in the immortal furnace, he put it in it. Refining. Su Tong placed his hands on the immortal furnace, activated the Taizhang Alchemy Sutra, and began to increase the fire power to try to refine this immortal. Wu Sheng Laoxian didn't take it seriously at first, but soon realized something was wrong. He felt that the flames produced by the immortal furnace began to erase his spiritual will. Wait, what kind of stove do you have? Immortal Wushan had a premonition that a disaster was coming, and immediately began to struggle. Impossible, how can such a thing appear in the mortal world? Impossible. The true treasure of the immortal family should never appear in the mortal world. How could it fall into the hands of this boy? Stop it, stop it. I have a great fate with you, please stop it. Ha! Believe it or not. Su Tong rolled his eyes. Instead of stopping, he increased his fire power and even activated the heaven's blessing. In his eyes, being able to refine a god into a pill was an opportunity in itself. Suddenly, I saw the fire surging in the immortal furnace, and in an instant, the black shadow was engulfed in the sea of fire. Within a moment, a clanging sound was heard in the alchemy furnace. This time Da Ya and the others came together. In the past, they were training to be a ghost or something, but this time, it was just a god. Everyone was looking forward to what kind of treasure they would be able to create. I saw Su Tong opening the pill furnace, and 5 crystal clear pills were deposited in the pill box. Su Tong picked it up and took a look. The pills looked bright and clear, with a vague special divinity on them. The only pity is that the grade is a little lower, not reaching the 9th grade. After Su Tong threw it into the prop book, the entry was displayed in the prop book. Wu Sheng Dan. Infinite and limitless, non-players can comprehend the magic of inanimate magic and ascend to the status of God in an exceptional way. After the player eats it, the soul will be enhanced by 25%. Invalid if consumed repeatedly.